Chapter 2736. My original plan was that sending out the Divine King would definitely result in losses, so I would personally take action and wipe out these otherworldly demons. Hegemon Tianai continued. But I suddenly thought of you. As long as you kill the otherworldly demons, you'll be able to obtain the power of good karma, which will allow you to rapidly increase your strength. That's why I didn't take action. I wanted to leave them to you. Lord Hegemon, how many Divine King are there among the otherworldly demons invading this time? If Hegemon Tianai were to take action, even 1 or 2 hegemons wouldn't be a problem, much less a God King level otherworldly demon. Knight Sorrow felt grateful for his words. If he could kill 10 or 20 Divine King level otherworldly demons, his strength would increase tremendously. I don't know the exact number, but it's definitely no less than 10. One of them is very strong, probably at the half-step Hegemon level. If you hurry over, you must pay attention to him. Hegemon Tianai immediately changed the topic. This matter isn't urgent. They can still hold on for now. If there are any changes, I'll immediately inform you. Let's first choose a location for your immortal domain. Thank you, Hegemon Tianai. Knight Sorrow immediately expressed his gratitude. There's no time like the present. Since you're already here, immediately follow me to the chosen location. Hegemon Tianai stood up and continued. I know that you're not someone who can endure, so the territory I'm giving you won't be within my domain. It can only be at the edge. It's connected to the other Hegemon territories. This way, you won't receive much protection, but it'll also be a good way to temper your faction. Lord Hegemon, you've thought things through thoroughly. Knight Sorrow doesn't even know what to say. Knight Sorrow said with a smile. Within the Clear Heaven Pagoda, his family members also felt that Hegemon Tianai was very kind and praised him quite a bit. Ha! Knight Sorrow. From this moment onward, you're going to be a domain lord. I hope that you'll be able to establish a faction that's not inferior to a Hegemon territory. Thus, from now on, you and I are of the same generation. In the future, you can just call me Brother Tianai. Hegemon Tianai said with a smile, then took out a flying divine artifact. He brought Knight Sorrow and Long Tianqing to the edge of his territory, where they began to fly along the borders of other Hegemon territories. Then he said, if you've taken a fancy to an area, just shout stop, and draw a circle around it. No one doesn't value something like territory. But I, Tianai, value you more. Knight Sorrow doesn't know what to say. Yi Shang felt that it wasn't right for him to keep thanking him. He pondered for a moment and said, in the future, I will give Brother Tianai a big gift. What Hegemon Tianai was doing right now was a debt of gratitude. Knight Sorrow was determined to wait until Hegemon Tianai reached the Hegemon level. If Hegemon Tianai failed to become a paragon, he would think of a way to bring back some resources from the eternal paragon world to help him break through. Haha. Eyes Hegemon Knight. Hegemon Tianai began to laugh, causing everyone to feel as though they were bathing in a spring breeze. Knight Sorrow and Long Tianqing both had a very good impression of him. Of course, Long Tianqing knew that this was only because Hegemon Tianai greatly admired Knight Sorrow. Otherwise, she wouldn't have received such treatment. Brother Tianai, I'll choose somewhere nearby. They hadn't gone very far when Knight Sorrow suddenly pointed in a direction. The area he was pointing at was very suitable for activating the Heaven and Earth formation. If they set up a Domain Lord's Manor here, no one would be able to find it. All right, then I'll start drawing you a map. Knight Sorrow spoke very quickly. Hegemon Tianai didn't hesitate and immediately drew a large area on the map. In terms of size, it was roughly a quarter of Tianya's territory. Brother Tianai, this isn't good. Knight Sorrow won't be able to accept it if you draw it like this. Now that Yi Shan had seen it clearly, he immediately refused. Tianya's painting was too big, far surpassing his imagination. He truly couldn't accept such a large area. No matter. I'm giving it to you, so just accept it. However, this is a test for you. I want to see if you can defend such a large territory. Hegemon Tianai smiled. He didn't seem to feel any pain in drawing such a large area, nor did he care what others said. This was a boldness that most people didn't possess. Knight Sorrow understands Brother Tianya's good intentions. Knight Sorrow isn't afraid of being targeted by others. but I definitely can't accept such a large area. Night Sorrow replied, then said, Night Sorrow can accept having this area. Night Sorrow will personally fight for an even larger territory. Haha, you. Hegemony and I smiled and said, all right. Half it is. After saying this, he completely drew the area on the map, then looked at Night Sorrow and said, this area borders the Dark Moon Dominator's territory and the Seven Star Dominator's territory. It's very close to the Cloud Immortal continent, so it'll be good for you to help protect Tianyan School. Alright, then it's settled. When Night Sorrow heard Hegemonya's words, he instantly felt that this was a good choice. Being closer to Tianyan School meant that he could help look after Tianyan School. Alright. I'll immediately announce this to the entire heavenly realm. Let everyone know that there's an immortal divine realm in the heavenly realm. Hegemony said. He was doing this to give some pressure. Otherwise, Night Sorrow's growth would be very slow if he was completely under his protection. Alright. Night Sorrow will do his best to protect the immortal divine realm. Night Sorrow said. He knew that it would be very difficult to protect such a large area. It was almost impossible. However, he had obtained it, so he had to do his best to fight for it. In the future, unless a hegemon personally attacks you, I won't interfere. However, before that, choose a location for the Domain Master's Manor, and I'll set up a formation for you. Hegemony and I pointed at the large area beneath his feet. I'll choose this place. Night Sorrow pointed at a mountain range in front of him. If he had enough materials, he could activate the Heaven and Earth Concealment Formation here. That way, even a hegemon wouldn't be able to find the people from the Night Moon Dynasty. Alright. Hegemony and I nodded, and immediately set up a defensive formation around them. This formation was useless against a hegemon, but it wasn't something that the Divine King could break. This could be considered as him helping the Night Moon Dynasty get rid of their worries. After finishing the defensive spell formation, Hegemony and I said a few words, then left without hesitation. Night Sorrow and the people from the Night Moon Dynasty carefully set up the Domain Master's Manor in this area. A month later, the Domain Master's Manor was set up. Yi Shang released everyone from the Clear Sky Pagoda and placed the King Grade Divine Pulse in the array of the Domain Chief's Manor. Chapter 2737. Night Sorrow wasn't sure what was going on in his immortal dominion. He was going to bring people to patrol the area. Tianya's dominion was huge, so he couldn't possibly rely on his subordinates to manage all the areas. Especially the immortal dominion, which was located at the edge of Tianya's dominion. It was likely to be under the control of various factions. There might be a divine king there, or there might not be. He was going to make those who had submitted to Tianai continue to submit to the immortal dominion, and banish those who didn't. Brother, give me the map. Let's see what factions there are in the immortal dominion. Night Sorrow asked Xianjizi for the latest map of the factions in the immortal dominion. He discovered that the immortal dominion used to be under the control of a divine king named Bei Ning. 12 of the major cities were under the control of Bei Ning's subordinates. As for the other 10 cities and regions, they were under the control of other factions. Gather all our brothers who are divine monarchs and above. We'll make a trip to the divine king's residence. Tianai has already announced it to the world, but he hasn't said anything. This means that he doesn't care about the immortal dominion at all. We have to deal with this. As for the other smaller factions and cities, we can ignore them for now. Night Sorrow explained to Xianjizi after looking through the map. Xianjizi was the vice-captain of the God-slaying squad, and he could finally take up the post. However, he was still a little weak. He hadn't reached Divine Monarch yet. Upon hearing Night Sorrow's words, Xianjizi said, Captain, Bei Ning's Divine King is Tianya's subordinate after all. Shouldn't we talk to him before heading to the Divine King's residence? There's no need to talk to him. Tianai gave us this place without any special instructions. He just gave us free rein. Night Sorrow shook his head. Bei Ning's Divine King hasn't left the immortal dominion. He's obviously targeting us. There's no need to think too much about people like him. Just beat him into submission. Captain's analysis makes sense. It's intolerable to have someone like him beside us. Xianjizi had originally thought that Night Sorrow was being a little rash, but after hearing his words, he immediately reacted. Since Hegementi and I gave this place to us, we must let the entire God world know that this place is called the Deathless Divine Realm. After Night Sorrow finished speaking, he went to see his wives and Wu Lingfei. He said to Jing Yin and Wu Lingfei, I know where the ancestral phoenix's nest is. Once the matter at hand is settled, I will take you there. Lord Ancestor Phoenix should be the ancestor of everyone in the Phoenix clan. However, it disappeared many years ago. How do you know about the ancestral phoenix's nest? When Wu Lingfei heard Night Sorrow's words, she immediately asked. She already knew that Night Sorrow knew about the ancestral phoenix nest, but she was curious about how Night Sorrow knew about it. I've seen Supreme Ancestor Phoenix. Night Sorrow transmitted his voice to Wu Lingfei. Even in front of his wives, he didn't mention the eternal supreme world. You've seen Supreme Ancestor Phoenix? You're saying he's still alive? Wu Lingfei was puzzled when she heard Night Sorrow's words. He's still alive, but he's no longer in the divine realm. He's in another realm, and his strength surpasses that of a ruler. Night Sorrow explained before continuing, My Samsara halberd has his aura. Is Supreme Ancestor Phoenix male or female? Wu Lingfei suddenly asked after a moment of silence. This seems to be a male? I'm not sure. Night Sorrow was stumped by Wu Lingfei's question. He felt that the other party might be a male, but after thinking about it carefully he couldn't be sure. Then what's the problem? You should go about your business. Wu Lingfei continued. Why does Aunt Fei feel that something is off? Night Sorrow felt that Wu Lingfei's behavior was a little strange. However, by this time, Xianjizi had finished assembling the Divine Lords, and had also gathered the 10,000 high gods that the Dark Moon Ruler had sent to the immortal divine realm a few days ago. The Dark Moon Ruler had originally intended to give a portion of his territory to Night Sorrow, so that he could only choose the area that bordered the Dark Moon Ruler's territory. However, before he could say anything, Night Sorrow had chosen this area. This made him very happy, and he didn't hesitate to give away the promised 10,000 high gods. From now on, everyone is a member of the immortal divine realm. If there are any objections, you can withdraw immediately. I, Night Sorrow, will not pursue the matter. However, if you betray me, no one in the divine realm will be able to protect you. Night Sorrow stood in the middle of the many divine lords on the tower of the Domain Master's manor, looking down at the 10,000 high gods below. We are willing to follow Domain Master Night Sorrow to the death. These high gods weren't very willing to be given to Night Sorrow by the Dark Moon Ruler. After all, Night Sorrow was only a divine lord. However, since they had already made the oath, there was no chance for them to go back on their word. They silently accepted their new status and shouted together. Good. Our immortal divine realm has just been established. Compared to the other sovereign divine realms, it is very weak. However, our goal is to establish ourselves in the divine realm, and our status will not be inferior to any of the sovereign divine realms. Now that he said that, he was definitely extremely arrogant. However, one day, we will achieve this goal. After shouting, Night Sorrow flew into the sky and said, Everyone, follow me to the Binding Divine King's manor. We will demand an explanation. Yes. The 10,000 high gods on the ground shouted in unison. Every one of them had ordinary talents among the high gods. They were only able to become high gods through the use of medicinal pills. There was not much room for them to improve their strength. In the divine realm, they were pitiful existences. Everyone follow me. After the high gods followed, Night Sorrow immediately shouted to Xianjizi, the 13 eagles of Yunling, and the others on the city wall. Immediately, the 13 eagles of Yunling, Mo Yuqian, and the others followed behind him. They rushed towards the Binding Divine King's manor in an orderly manner. This wasn't Night Sorrow's style of doing things. However, he felt that only by doing things on a grand scale could he serve as an example to the others and solve the internal problems of the immortal divine realm smoothly. In about half a month's time, Yishang and his men arrived outside Bainang City in a grandiose manner. Bainang City was floating above a large lake. Above it was the sky and below it was the water. Together with the decorations of the clouds, it looked very beautiful. However, when Night Sorrow and the others arrived, they felt a strong murderous aura. Yishang, you're making such a big scene. Are you here to attack the Divine King? Yishang had just steadied himself when Divine Monarch Bei Ning, who was standing in the middle of the city, spoke. Either submit or leave. Knight Sorrow said coldly as he looked at the Divine King of Bei Ning. Do you know that I am the subordinate of Sovereign Tianai? This is my territory. The Divine King of Bei Ning said unhappily. Sovereign Tianai asked you to manage this territory, but it has been renamed to the Immortal Divine Realm. If you don't submit, you can leave. Chapter 2738. Divine Lord Relmant, what big tone you have. After being scolded by Knight Sorrow, Bei Ning's Divine King exploded. He pointed at Knight Sorrow and said, if you hadn't caused trouble, this Divine King could have kept you alive for a while. Now that you're courting death, don't blame this Divine King. I'd like to see how you're going to kill me. Knight Sorrow hovered in front of the army outside the city and looked at the Divine King of Bei Ning. Although he hadn't been in the Divine Realm for long, he had already encountered many people on the same level as the Divine King. Ha ha ha. This Divine King of Bei Ning has operated here for dozens of cycles. How can an outsider like you compare to my military strength? The Divine King of Bei Ning laughed wantonly. Since Lord Tian Yi didn't say anything, that means he's tacitly allowing me to continue occupying this place. Since Lord Tian Yi didn't say anything, he must want you to be my whetstone. Knight Sorrow heard the Divine King of Bei Ning's words and immediately understood what was going on. Lord Tianye's thoughts must be the same as his. The reason must be that there was something wrong with this Divine King of Bei Ning. Whetstone. Ha ha ha. It doesn't matter who the whetstone is. What's important is that your so-called immortal divine realm will soon be destroyed. After the Divine King of Bei Ning laughed, he said, left and right, gather the troops and head out of the city for battle. Today, Bei Ning will destroy this so-called immortal divine realm. You want to destroy the immortal divine realm? Very well. I'll wait for you to leave the city. The Divine King of Bei Ning's words didn't just enrage Knight Sorrow, but also Jin Ye, the 13 Cloudridge Eagles, and other experts. All of them unleashed their fighting spirit and aura. Haha. Enjoy your last moments. The Divine King of Bei Ning's face was filled with confidence. Not long after, the source of his confidence was revealed to everyone. There was an army of 120,000 high gods in the city. This army of 120,000 marched toward the city gates with an aura that was even more terrifying than the heavens itself. Their thick killing intent made one's heart palpitate. So many high gods, at least 100,000. We only have 10,000. How can we be a match? The high gods of the immortal dominion were alarmed by the sudden appearance of so many people. In their opinion, with 1 against 10, their side was bound to be defeated. What are you panicking? With the domain leader here, no matter how many people come, we won't be afraid. The Divine King of Bei Ning scolded the immortal Divine King of Bei. Divine King Bei Ning sneered and mocked. What? The battle hasn't even started yet. And you're already scared out of your wits by the army of my northern condensation divine region? Soldiers of the immortal domain, if you are afraid, you may surrender now. I, the North Congealing Godly King, will take you in regardless of the past. I think you still need some time to reorganize your army. Knight Sorrow, who was standing at the front of the army, immediately activated the Treastrimsa Heaven's Battle Mystic Art and issued a challenge to God King Northern Convergence. You're just a divine sovereign. What right do you have to challenge the Divine King? Standing on the city wall, God King Bei Ning sneered and rejected in a very arrogant manner. He knew that Knight Sorrow had a sovereign artifact and would be difficult to deal with. He was afraid that he would be captured before the battle even began. Just say you don't dare. Since you don't dare, then I'll attack. The immortal divine realm's morale was weak. Knight Sorrow and the Divine King of Bei Ning roared and took out the Tianyan Bao and Skycloud arrow. They shot an arrow at the city gates. Boom. The first Skycloud arrow fiercely bombarded the array outside the city gate. The Great City Barrier array shook violently, but it did not directly break through its defenses. Aha. You want to use a sovereign artifact to break through the defenses? You're dreaming. This God King formation had been set up by Hegemon Tianai in the past. It's not something a divine sovereign ant like you can break through. The divine king of Beining laughed when he saw that Night Sorrow's arrow hadn't broken through the formation, and the city gates were unharmed. At the same time, his 2 deputies were leading the army toward the city gates. They would arrive soon. You're right. I want to use this method to boost the morale of the army. Night Sorrow replied coldly to the divine king of Beining's mockery. He reached out and summoned the sky-cloud arrow back to him. At the same time he roared, I offer my blood to the divine bow. Today, the immortal divine realm will defeat the northern divine realm. He then poured his blood into the Tianyun bow. After absorbing Night Sorrow's blood, the Tianyun bow immediately transformed. It shone with a dazzling light and an extremely powerful aura. So this is a sovereign artifact. If the domain lord has a sovereign artifact, does that mean he'll become a sovereign in the future? Tianyun Bao's aura was so vast that it shocked the immortal divine realm's high gods. They had been given to Night Sorrow by the Dark Moon ruler, so they knew that even the Dark Moon ruler didn't have an undamaged sovereign artifact. When they saw the sovereign artifact in Night Sorrow's hand, their spirits were lifted. Insignificant tricks. In the face of absolute power, all tricks are useless. Your immortal divine realm will be destroyed. The divine king of Beining still didn't take the immortal divine realm's forces seriously. At the same time he shouted into the void, left and right. Why are you dragging this out? Hurry up and bring your men over. Reporting to the divine king, our north congealing army has too many soldiers, more than 10 times their number. Therefore we will need more time. One of the deputies in the void replied, You'll understand in a moment. Whatever the high gods say, they're just symbols. Yishang laughed coldly. Then he knocked an arrow on his bow and shot another sky cloud arrow. The moment the sky cloud arrow was shot, Night Sorrow shouted, Charge in with me. Kill. Xian Jizi led the charge. The 13 Yunling eagles, Mo Yuqian and the other puppets, the high gods of Xiao Tianxuan's family, and Geng Chen from the god-slaying squad all followed suit. The 10,000 high gods of the immortal divine realm followed suit. Kill. 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 Their loud roars reverberated between heaven and earth, and their aura was shocking. Boom. At this moment the sky cloud arrow hit the defensive formation again and broke through it. The arrow landed on the city gate beneath the divine king of Beining's feet and shattered it. Bastard. Everyone charge in with me. The moment the city gate was shattered, the divine king of Beining's face turned as red as a pig's liver. As he gave the order, the 10 Sir gods beside him took out their own divine weapons from their space dharma instruments. Alright. The immortal divine realm's army roared in excitement. At the same time, they followed Night Sorrow and charged forward. You're courting death. Today, all of you will die here. The divine king of Beining's eyes darkened when he saw the reaction of Night Sorrow and the others. Chapter 2739. Noticing the divine king's movement, Night Sorrow immediately activated the sea serpent's eye and looked in that direction. Passing through the clouds, he saw an old man in the sky. Judging from his aura, it was the divine king. Who's that? Yishang pointed in the direction of the void and transmitted his voice to Jinye. I can't see anyone there. Jinye replied honestly. He didn't have the sea serpent's eye, and his divine sense couldn't reach that far. Then you don't need to join the battle. Stay at the back and guard against that person's sneak attack. Night Sorrow instructed Jinye before leading his army to the city gates. The Northern Condensation Divine Realm's army of 120,000 was already charging toward the Immortal Divine Realm's army. Kill. Annihilate the Immortal Dominion's brats. On the other side, the Divine King, whom Night Sorrow had been guarding against, slowly landed at the back of the Immortal Dominion's army. Using a spatial artifact, he summoned an army of 100,000 to surround the Immortal Dominion's army. Night Sorrow. Let's see how your 10,000 brats will fare against our 220,000 strong army. The old man who'd summoned his army shouted with a ferocious glint in his eyes. Who are you? The Immortal Dominion's army was still some distance away from the Immortal Dominion's army. This old man is the steward of the Dark Moon Dominion's residence. I'm here on orders from the Lord to deal with a brat like you. The steward of the Dark Moon Dominion's residence didn't have a name. This divine king and the steward will attack from both sides. Night Sorrow, let's see if you can grow wings and fly away today. The divine king of North Condensation's smile widened when the steward appeared with his army. Night Sorrow's 10,000 Immortal Dominion's army began to panic again. 10,000 against 220,000. This was an overwhelming advantage in numbers. It was only natural that they were afraid. Don't panic. No matter how many immortals they have, it won't affect the outcome of the battle. Seeing that his side's formation was in chaos, Yishan immediately roared. He used some of the green rock soul-rending roars moves to intimidate the Immortal Dominion. But ruler, we're not only outnumbered, we're outnumbered by the steward's army. The leader of the Immortal Dominion's eyes immediately responded to Night Sorrow's direction. The Dark Moon Dominion's army was the Dominion's army's army was the weakest. The steward's army's army was the Dark Moon Dominion's army? No matter. Leave the army. S's army's army. Yi Shang replied nonchalantly, and then prepared to attack the front and back armies. Divine Monarch Bei Ning and the steward laughed when they heard Yi Shang's words. God. The immortals. S's dominion. S residences as gods as S? SSSSS. S dominions, haha, that's right. With this divine king, and the divine king here, you won't be able to cause any trouble. A cruel smile appeared on the steward's face. Yi Shang, however, remained unmoved. Bai Ning. I understand now. Dominion T and I already knew that you were in cahoots with the Dark Moon Dominion, and was prepared to abandon you. I originally wanted to show mercy, but it seems like there's no need for that now. Show mercy? No need. This Divine King wants to see how you're not going to show mercy. Divine King Bai Ning laughed loudly. At the same time, the two armies were getting closer and closer. Seeing the situation, Xian Jizi frantically transmitted to Night Sorrow. Captain, what should we do? The difference in numbers is too big. We're hard to deal with. Don't panic. Night Sorrow's reply was calm. He then roared. Trust me, we can break through to 220,000. Kill them. Charge. Follow me. Xian Jizi knew Yi Shang well and knew that he never lied, so he immediately shouted. Brothers. Kill them. We're going to die anyway. Even if we die, we'll take one with us. If we can kill two, we'll make a profit. The leader of the Exalted God's army also shouted. After all, they had all sworn an oath to the heavens, and could not choose to retreat at the critical moment. Kill them. Think about how you were abandoned by the Dark Moon Dominion. Don't you have any motivation? Night Sorrow hovered in the air and roared. Yes. Kill. Why should we be looked down upon? That's right. Even if we die, we must at least take out one of the Dark Moon Dominion's army. After Night Sorrow spoke, the Exalted God's army immediately roared. Very good. But even if you want to die in battle, you won't get the chance. Seeing the determination of the Exalted God's army, Night Sorrow nodded in satisfaction, and gathered his virtuous energy. He shouted, I seal. In the blink of an eye, the Dark Moon Dominion's and North Condensation's armies were all frozen. 220,000 soldiers were frozen in place the moment they approached the Exalted God's army. What's going on? What sorcery is this? Not even a Dominion can do this. The Divine King of North Condensation and the Dark Moon Dominion's steward were dumbfounded at the sight. This was something they'd never imagined even in their wildest dreams. After taking a good look and confirming that it wasn't an illusion, the two of them exchanged a look and saw the fear in each other's eyes. Night Sorrow hadn't even done anything. He'd only shouted 2 words, and all he'd done was freeze all 220,000 soldiers. It was an unheard of technique. In fact, it wasn't just the Divine King of North Condensation and the steward who were shocked. The 30 or so divine sovereigns behind them were all flabbergasted. Night Sorrow's technique wasn't something even a Dominion could do. It even felt like the power of the heavens and earth. It was mysterious to an unimaginable degree. Your Excellency, what technique is this? Isn't it a little too terrifying? The exalted gods of the immortal dominion were stunned when they saw all 220,000 frozen exalted gods. Even Xianjizi and the 13 Cloud Ridge Eagles were flabbergasted. What are you standing there for? The Divine King of North Condensation has joined forces with the Dark Moon Dominion and betrayed Dominion Tianyi. Today the Immortal Dominion will clean up the traitor in Tianye's place. Knight Sorrow didn't bother to explain his absolute command. He simply gave the order. It was one of his special abilities to enforce the law with words. No one with a lower cultivation than him could escape his wrath. As long as he said the word, he could freeze them or summon lightning tribulation. He could even kill them all if he wanted. But to kill all 220,000 exalted gods was bound to be punished by the heavens. Therefore, Knight Sorrow chose to freeze them all. As for the Immortal Dominion's exalted gods, they were completely out of his control. They immediately charged. Chapter 2740. Quick! Let's attack the Immortal Divine Realm's exalted gods together. Otherwise, our 220,000 exalted gods will be wiped out. Seeing the situation before her eyes, Divine King Northern Coagulation was completely dumbfounded. He and the butler had concocted a scheme to lure Knight Sorrow into the trap. They did not expect Knight Sorrow to use such an invincible method. This was simply heaven-defying. Kill. All divine lords, follow me to kill Knight Sorrow. He's a monster. The butler could no longer remain calm. Without waiting for Divine King Bei Ning's order, he led his divine lords and charged at Night Moon's group. Brother Jianye, you deal with the butler. The rest of you deal with the divine lords. Leave Bei Ning Divine King to me. Knight Sorrow used his divine soul to check on the butler, and found that his aura was stronger than Jinye's. However, the gap between the two was not big. Jinye should be able to hold on for a while. As long as he could kill Divine King Bei Ning in a short period of time, he would be able to lend a helping hand. As for the divine lords, Knight Sorrow was not worried at all with the 13 eagles of Yunling and Mo Yuqian around. Knight Sorrow, you little brat, come and die. While Knight Sorrow and Jinye were talking, Divine King Bei Ning and the butler attacked Knight Sorrow together. Your opponent is me. Jinye immediately stood in front of the butler, preventing them from fighting 2 against 1. He glanced at Jinye's butler and smiled coldly. You are not the Divine King's match. You are courting death if you stop me. F***CKU. The Divine King? Who isn't the Divine King? Stop pretending. Jinye was a mid-level Divine King. He was very strong. However, ever since he left the ancient Golden Crow realm, he had lost almost every battle. After scolding the butler, he took out the divine artifact furnace and blasted a flame at the butler. It's just a small trick. In the face of Jinye's attack, the butler smiled indifferently and swung his sleeve out. It directly extinguished Jinye's flames. This robe was prepared by Dark Moon for him to use to kill Knight Sorrow. It was a half-step dominator rank, not something a normal king rank Divine King could compare to. Bastard. Am I, Jinye, going to lose again today? No. I refuse to accept this. Jinye, who had recognized the butler's extraordinary robes with a single glance, was rather displeased. But even if he was unhappy, he was still weaker than the butler in the first place. His divine weapon was not as sharp as the butler's, so he could only passively take the beating. He was so aggrieved that he wanted to die. Ha! What? Unreconciled? This Divine King's divine weapon is better than yours. It can suppress you. Do you have any ideas? The steward continued to unleash his half-step sovereign artifact, suppressing Jinye to the point where he couldn't even fight back. He laughed wantonly. When Brother Knight Sorrow kills Bei Ning Divine King, you'll get it. Jinye replied coldly. However, he was a little doubtful. He wasn't sure how long he could last. You'd better think about whether you can last until then. Haha. Die. The butler, who had gained the upper hand by relying on the divine weapon's power, laughed arrogantly and prepared to unleash the robe's related ultimate technique. Not good. Jinye, who was already weaker than his opponent, immediately had a bad feeling when he saw the butler preparing to unleash his ultimate technique. He had a premonition that he wouldn't be able to withstand this attack. At this moment, Knight Sorrow suddenly transmitted, Brother Jinye, take the bow. Take the bow. Jinye was a little confused. Knight Sorrow immediately continued. Didn't he think his divine weapon was powerful? Take the Tianyan Bao and deal with him. Night Sorrow's original plan was to rely on Tianyan Bao to quickly get rid of Bei Ning Divine King. However, he realized that the other party wasn't so easy to deal with. Even with Tianyan Bao's help, he wouldn't be able to kill him in a short time. Seeing that Jin Ye couldn't hold on so quickly, he immediately changed his plan. He directly handed the Tianyan Bao and the heavenly cloud arrow to Jin Ye and let him try to kill the butler. Good. Jin Ye won't disappoint. After taking the Tianyan Bao, a cruel smile appeared on Jin Ye's originally sullen face. He glared fiercely at the butler and said, "Your divine weapon is powerful, isn't it? Come on. Let's see if it's as powerful as a sovereign divine weapon." The instant the butler attacked, he drew the bow and shot 3 heavenly cloud arrows in succession. Bastard. Even lending out a sovereign divine weapon, this Night Sorrow. The Dark Moon ruler's butler originally wanted to complain, but he immediately shut his mouth. The heavenly cloud arrows that Jin Ye shot were too powerful. The first arrow had already shattered his sleeve. The second and third arrows seemed to have come alive and chased after him. Haha. You want to be awesome? You want to show off? It's just a high-grade divine weapon. After shooting 3 heavenly cloud arrows in succession, although Jin Ye was suffering from the recoil, he felt indescribably carefree. On the other side, Bei Ning Divine King saw that Night Sorrow had actually lent the sovereign divine weapon Tianyan Bao to Jin Ye, and immediately mocked. A mere divine king dares to lend a sovereign divine weapon to the divine king? You are courting death. You should speak with your strength. After all, you don't have my ability if you rely on your mouth. Night Sorrow, who had frozen the army of 220,000 exalted gods, mocked back. Bei Ning Divine King was indeed not weak, but he was confident that he could protect himself without using Tianyan Bao. Strength. The Divine King can crush you with one hand. Prepare to die. Bei Ning Divine King scanned the battlefield and saw that the battle between the Divine King and the Divine Lords was in a stalemate. The exalted gods on both sides were completely frozen and were being slaughtered by the Immortal Realm's army. If he couldn't suppress Yishang quickly, then the 120,000 troops under his command would be wiped out very quickly. With a loud roar, God King Northern Coagulation took out an extremely simple and unadorned jar from her spatial artifact. The jar was slightly damaged and had no lid. However, the moment he took it out, Night Sorrow sensed danger. Night Sorrow opened his sea serpent's eye and exclaimed, "It's a damaged sovereign divine weapon. Although it's severely damaged, it can definitely crush a king-grade divine weapon. Looks like you have some eyesight. However, just eyesight alone is not enough. Prepare to die. You can't imagine how powerful a sovereign divine weapon is." Bei Ning Divine King roared and threw the broken jar at Night Sorrow. The broken and lidless jar did not emit any light or any terrifying aura after it was thrown. However, Night Sorrow felt that it was extremely dangerous. What kind of attack is this jar going to unleash? Even after opening his sea serpent's eye, Night Sorrow still could not see any clues about the jar. Although it was a damaged sovereign divine weapon, it was completely different from a king-grade divine weapon. Night Sorrow only realized how difficult it was for his opponent to face Tianyan Bao. He prepared to die. If I didn't want to kill you immediately, I wouldn't have. The Divine King will not use his trump card. Chapter 2741. The most important function of this seemingly ordinary and even damaged earthen jar was to confuse a cultivator's mind. It could make a cultivator lose themselves in an instant. When the earthen jar approached Night Sorrow, it immediately released a layer of gray light. The black light didn't give off a special feeling, but when it enveloped Night Sorrow, he suddenly felt as if his divine soul was being separated from his body and entered into another world. He couldn't resist the huge suction force at all. By the time he reacted, one of Night Sorrow's divine souls had already entered a dark and bloody world of slaughter. The moment he entered this world, he began a slaughter that left others breathless. There were constantly Divine Lord level, and even God King level wraiths that attacked him. Even though Night Sorrow's divine soul was very strong, it was still very difficult to resist. Not long after, he started to get injured. No. This place is too strange. There are probably thousands of Divine Monarch and Divine King level wraiths. It's not something I can resist. From the looks of it, the only way is to use another Divine Ocean to kill the Divine King outside. Control the earthen jar, and let me out. Night Sorrow's divine soul, which had been sucked into the dark and bloody world, struggled with all his might, and realized the seriousness of the matter. He judged that the wraiths inside should have been sucked in by the black light of the earthen jar. This earthen jar was once a sovereign-level divine artifact. The wraiths inside might be close to the sovereign level. He was in great danger. Ha ha ha. None of the divine souls of cultivators who have been sucked into this divine artifact can come out. I've already killed the butler, Night Sorrow. How are things on your side? After confirming that Night Sorrow's divine soul had been sucked into the earthen jar, the Divine King of North Ning laughed and asked, "Can't you see how I'm doing?" At this moment, the butler was in a very sorry state. Under the pursuit of the heavenly cloud arrow, he was already covered in wounds. With Tian Yunbao's help, Jin Nia was like a god helping him. He had already completely suppressed the butler. If the steward of the Dark Moon ruler continued to be suppressed like this, it wouldn't be long before he was killed. When he heard the Divine King of Bining's words, he snapped, "Quick attack. Help me deal with him. A complete sovereign artifact is simply too terrifying." Of course I know how terrifying a sovereign artifact is. Just like my jar. As long as you suck it in and don't break the jar, you will never be able to come out. The Divine King of North Ning smiled, and casually threw a palm strike at the motionless Night Sorrow. He felt that his soul had been sucked away and would definitely be killed by this palm strike. At the same time, he threw the jar in Jin Ye's direction without even looking. Use the heavenly cloud arrow to shoot at this pot. Dodging won't work. Night Sorrow, whose divine soul had already taken control of his body, controlled the heavenly Samsara halberd to resist the attack of Bei Ning's Divine King, and transmitted a message to Jin Ye. Just like the flying jar, he used the Divine Essence Dragon Locking spell. Jin Ye was stunned when he heard Night Sorrow's voice transmission. When he came to his senses, he immediately replied, "All right. I will attack with all my might." At the same time, he immediately drew his bow and shot at the jar. The Divine Essence Dragon Locking spell had a slight effect on the jar, and allowed the Heavenly Cloud Arrow to hit its target. The Heavenly Cloud Arrow bombarded the jar, causing the cracks on the jar to become even more terrifying. It was as if the jar would shatter at any time. "Bastard. You were sucked in by the jar, and you still managed to come out. How did you do it?" Night Sorrow suddenly moved and blocked his attack. He also helped Jin Ye to restrain the jar temporarily. This made the Divine King of North Ning extremely surprised and furious. The Divine King of North Ning could feel that the jar was damaged, and it made his heart ache. However, he could not figure out how Night Sorrow did it. He did not expect Night Sorrow to have two divine Cs. "You don't need to know how I did it. Die." Night Sorrow roared and once again activated the Treastrimsa Battle Mystic technique to increase his strength. At the same time, he flew to Jin Ye's side and took back the Tianyun Bao and madly poured his blood into it. After absorbing a large amount of blood, the Tianyun Bao trembled and was completely activated. After being activated, the Tianyun Bao instantly bloomed with light that spread to the horizon. Almost everyone present could not open their eyes. Not good. Night Sorrow is going all out and activating the sovereign artifact. It is very difficult for us to resist an activated sovereign artifact. What should we do? The butler of the Dark Moon ruler felt the terrifying aura of the Tianyun Bao after being activated, and immediately transmitted his voice to the Divine King of North Ning. When Jin Ye had controlled the Tianyun Bao, he had felt a lot of pressure, and was very uncomfortable. Now that the Tianyun Bao had been activated and the terrifying aura spread to the horizon, he immediately panicked. What else can we do? Let's take out our trump cards and fight. If the two of us escape, the 200,000 high gods here will definitely be slaughtered. After suffering such great losses, will the Dark Moon ruler let us go? The Divine King of North Ning sighed in response. Then he asked curiously, "Did the Lord ruler not give you any powerful treasures?" He did have a king-class talisman that is infinitely close to the Lord ruler's strength. After the butler finished, he said viciously, "The Lord Ruler personally refined this talisman. However, he limited its level to king class. He told me to use it to kill Night Sorrow. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and attack." The Divine King of North Ning immediately said angrily. In truth, although he was a subordinate of Lord Tianai, he had long been in cahoots with the Dark Moon Ruler. "This is Night Sorrow's talisman. We can't use it immediately. The Tianyun Bao in his hand has already been activated. Even if I activate the talisman, it won't hurt him." The butler replied, then continued, "Why don't you sacrifice that earthen jar and have it self-destruct to pose a threat to him? In a situation where he can't even fend for himself, I'll throw out the talisman. What do you think? Self-destructing the earthen jar? Don't even think about it. That's something this Divine King uses to save his life." The Divine King of North Ning immediately rejected this suggestion. A damaged sovereign artifact was still a sovereign artifact. No Divine King would be willing to use it to self-destruct. Sigh. That's true. If it were me, I wouldn't be willing to self-destruct either. However, you should be willing to part with a king-class artifact, right? As the steward continued to ask questions, he took out a king-grade flying sword from his spatial Dharma artifact and shot it towards Night Sorrow and the heavenly cloud bow, causing them to self-destruct. Seeing the butler's reaction, the Divine King of North Ning nodded and said, "Of course this Divine King is willing to part with an ordinary king-class artifact." As he replied, he threw out 2 king-class artifacts in succession, causing them to self-destruct. At this moment, Night Sorrow hadn't attacked when Tianyun Bao had activated the talisman. Instead, he stood there in a daze. Even when the king-class artifacts self-destructed, he didn't react at all. It was very strange. Chapter 2742. Lord Night Sorrow, get out of the way. The leader of the 13 Eagles of Cloud Ridge reminded him. The others were in a similar state. None of them understood why Night Sorrow had suddenly stopped moving. He hadn't reacted to the explosion at all. Mo Yuqian even wanted to rely on his own explosion to block Night Sorrow's attack, but he was too far away and couldn't make it in time. At this point, Tianyun Bao's light had completely vanished. "Haha. Steward, what are you waiting for? Didn't you tell me to explode my divine artifact so that you could find an opportunity like this? Now that he's not moving at all, why don't you use the talisman made by the Dark Moon Ruler?" Seeing Night Sorrow not moving, the Divine King of North Ning hurriedly shouted at the steward, "Why do I feel like there's something fishy going on?" The steward of the Dark Moon Ruler was a little hesitant. He didn't think Night Sorrow was a rash person. What's fishy? Blast him to pieces and end everything. Only by killing Night Sorrow can we save the rest of the high gods. Hurry up. The Divine King of North Ning urged. The way he saw it, if he delayed dealing with Night Sorrow, hundreds or even thousands of his high gods would die. Forget it. Let's do it. The steward, who had originally wanted to wait and see, snorted coldly. As long as we deal with him, there won't be any problems. As he spoke, he took out the powerful talisman the Dark Moon Ruler had given him and threw it at Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow, hurry up and dodge. Everyone from the immortal domain shouted anxiously at the sight before them. Haha, dodge. It's too late. Night Sorrow is dead for sure. Seeing the talisman the Dark Moon Ruler had made fly to Night Sorrow's side, the steward laughed heartily. As long as we kill everyone here, Tianai won't know. He Gem and Tianai wouldn't know. Let's work together to get rid of Night Sorrow. The Divine King of Bei Ning smiled coldly and said, I will immediately activate the formation and seal the space. Do not let anyone escape. How could he Gem and Tianai not know? If he didn't even know what was happening right under his nose, he wouldn't be the #1 expert in the God realm. Hearing Binaring's Divine King's words, the butler smiled. His mission was to help the Dark Moon Ruler kill Night Sorrow and capture Tianyun Bao. As for the Divine King of Baining, he didn't care at all. What's going on? The butler, who had been mocking Binaring's Divine King in his heart, suddenly noticed that the talisman he had activated did not explode when it approached Night Sorrow. He immediately looked over nervously. Seeing this, the butler's expression immediately changed. At this moment, Yishang had already opened his eyes. He controlled the heavenly cloud bow to suppress the talisman flying towards him. After the talisman was suppressed, a smile appeared on Night Sorrow's face. Then he tossed it towards the butler. This talisman was personally made by the Dark Moon ruler. Seeing the talisman flying towards him, he immediately used his movement technique to dodge. You want to run? Didn't you want to use this talisman to kill me? Now have a taste of its power. Yishan, who had recovered, immediately used the virtuous dragon-locking formation on the housekeeper when he saw that the housekeeper was trying to dodge. Being bound by the virtuous dragon-locking formation, the butler, who had originally wanted to dodge, immediately panicked. By the time he reacted and began to break the formation, the talisman had already exploded in the sealed space. Wang. After a muffled explosion, the already injured housekeeper was left with only half a life from the explosion of the divine talisman. Yishang seized the opportunity and drew his bow. He used the heavenly cloud arrow to pierce through his dantian. Then he crushed his spirit sea. Not good. If I, the divine king, don't run, I will definitely die. Seeing that the butler was instantly killed by Night Sorrow, the divine king of North Ning immediately panicked. He activated a secret technique to raise his strength to the maximum, and used his movement technique to escape. Seeing that he was escaping, Night Sorrow immediately grabbed 5 heavenly cloud arrows. He shouted, "Heavenly cloud 5 elemental arrows." Then he shot the 5 heavenly cloud arrows together. The 5 heavenly cloud arrows transformed into the energy of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth and shot towards the divine king of North Ning. Not good. This is the origin power of a sovereign. Tianyuan Bao has indeed been completely activated. The divine king of North Ning, who was escaping, felt the energy of the 5 heavenly cloud arrows behind him, and was immediately scared out of his wits. At this moment he looked at a corner of the void and shouted, "Lord Dark Moon Ruler, save me. North Ning swears to be loyal to you." Steal from Lord Tianai? I don't dare to do such a thing. You can go in peace. The Dark Moon ruler, who was hidden in the void, snorted coldly. When the butler died, he didn't even save him, let alone the divine king of North Ning. I, North Ning, am working for you, but you don't save me. The divine king of North Ning was disheartened by the Dark Moon ruler's cold rejection. At this moment, the 5 heavenly cloud arrows bombarded his body one after another, causing him to lose the ability to fight. Night Sorrow immediately rose into the air, and chased after him to kill him. Then he looked at the void and said, "Lord Darkmoon, next time, send a stronger divine king." Humph. The divine king of Dark Moon in the void snorted coldly after losing the butler, and 120,000 high gods. He didn't say anything and chose to leave immediately. After the Dark Moon ruler left, Night Sorrow looked at the divine lords and high gods who were still fighting and said, "Everyone stop." Yes. After Night Sorrow spoke, everyone from the immortal dominion stopped. The divine lords who followed the divine king of North Ning, and the butler knew that the 2 divine kings on their side had been killed, so they didn't dare to make a move. Almost all of them were in a state of submission. At the same time, Night Sorrow spoke and unfroze all the frozen high gods. After the remaining high gods recovered, they looked around blankly, not understanding what had just happened. Looking at them, Night Sorrow said, "I am Night Sorrow. The divine king of North Ning and the butler have both been killed. This is something you need to know. Also, you need to make a choice. Join the immortal dominion, or return to the dominion of Tianyi or the Dark Moon dominion." The 2 divine kings really died in battle? Some of the high gods asked incredulously. They have indeed been killed by Domain Lord Night Sorrow. A divine lord under the divine king of North Ning sighed helplessly. That's true. Upon hearing this, all the high gods present looked at Yi Shang in astonishment. Night Sorrow hovered in the void with the Tianyuan Bao in his hand. To them, he was as dazzling as the sun in the sky. What do we do? Where should we go? Chapter 2743. The steward's subordinates were glad that Night Sorrow didn't kill them and gave them a choice. They were worried that Night Sorrow would kill them if they chose to return to the Dark Moon Dominion. After all, they had sworn an oath to serve the Dark Moon Dominion for life. Divine King Ning's subordinates didn't hesitate. They all bowed to Night Sorrow and said, "We are willing to serve the immortal dominion." In fact, they had no other choice. Every one of them had sworn an oath to the Divine King Ning. Now that the Divine King Ning was dead, the oath was automatically lifted. Moreover, they had betrayed the Dark Moon Dominion, and weren't part of the Dark Moon Dominion. Their only choice was to join the Immortal Dominion. It's your fortune to choose to join the Immortal Dominion. Night Sorrow looked at the former subordinates of the Divine King Ning and said, "Originally, the Immortal Dominion didn't want to accept people so casually. But now, it seems that managing such a large dominion requires a lot of manpower. But there is one thing I must say first. I, Night Sorrow, have proven my Tao through virtue. If you join the Immortal Dominion, you must change some of your bad habits." Yes, Night Sorrow Dominion. The people who had pledged allegiance to Divine Monarch Northern Condensation immediately bowed towards Yishang. To them, it didn't matter who they followed. As for the steward's subordinates, they were the Dark Moon Dominion's subordinates. When they saw that the Divine King Ning's subordinates had submitted, they immediately lost their minds. Yishang, who was looking at them, said, "You can leave. But before you leave, you must swear that you will never do anything to harm the Immortal Dominion." Yes, Night Sorrow Dominion. They were obviously hesitant when they were spared by Night Sorrow. They didn't expect Night Sorrow to speak before they had made a choice. However, since they had been spared and Night Sorrow was a merit Divine Lord, they naturally knew that he would not go back on his word. They immediately rushed towards the Dark Moon Dominator's territory. Night Sorrow led the remaining people to the Divine King's residence in North Ning to take over everything there. After taking over the Divine King's residence, Night Sorrow thought for a moment, and said to Jin Ye, "Brother Jin Ye, the immortal realm lacks a Divine King like you. Why don't you stay here?" "Am I not supposed to stay here and fight alongside Brother Night Sorrow?" Jin Ye asked doubtfully when he heard Night Sorrow's words. "Once the matter at hand is settled, I will bring my wife and Auntie Faye to the Phoenix ancestral grounds to search for opportunities for them," Night Sorrow explained. "If you come with us, no one in the immortal domain will be able to suppress you." He didn't want Jin Ye to fend off the invasion of other powers, but to stabilize the immortal domain. After he finished speaking, Jin Ye nodded and said, "That's good. Then I will look after the immortal realm for Brother Night Sorrow. Don't worry, the immortal domain will not fall into chaos before you return." "Thank you, Brother Jin Ye." Night Sorrow cupped his fists and thanked him. "We have gone through fire and water together, no need to be so polite. It just so happens that I, your elder brother, am preparing to calm down and cultivate properly. After leaving the ancient Golden Crow realm, I have been at a disadvantage in every battle. This has made me very angry." Jin Ye sighed and then asked in confusion, "Oh right. Brother Night Sorrow, why were you in a daze during the battle just now?" "Oh, that matter. At that time, I activated Tianyun Bao and comprehended an ultimate technique within it. It is called the Heavenly Cloud 5 Elemental Arrow." Night Sorrow explained his state at the time. He had been completely immersed in comprehending the technique, and Tianyun Bao's energy had successfully protected him from harm. After he woke up, it had helped to suppress the divine talisman thrown by the butler. So that's how it is. Brother Night Sorrow is indeed not an ordinary person. Jin Ye praised with a smile and said, "Brother Night Sorrow, aren't you worried about the materials to activate the Heaven and Earth Great Formation? Why don't we take a look at Bei Ning and the butler's spatial artifacts, as well as the Divine King's treasury?" "Okay. I was thinking the same thing." Yishang nodded. Together with Jin Ye and the others, they went to the treasury of Northern Condensation's Divine King Manor to search for useful materials. The others could take any ordinary materials and resources, but Night Sorrow only took those that were useful for activating the Heaven and Earth Great Formation. After searching through the spatial artifacts of Bei Ning and the steward, as well as the treasury of Bei Ning's Divine King Palace, there were only 3 materials left for Night Sorrow. One was called Heaven's Eye Stone, one was called Sycamore Grass, and the last was Void Beast Bone. "Brother Jin Ye, please keep an eye out for these 3 materials. After this, I should go back to the Domain Chief's mansion to discuss the next step. As for the other areas, you can patrol for me." Night Sorrow felt that no one in the immortal divine realm could pose a threat to Jin Ye now that Bei Ning and the Divine King had been killed. Therefore he trusted Jin Ye. Xianjizi was asked to stay by Jin Ye's side to assist him. Sometimes Jin Ye was not very smart, while Xianjizi was a little weak, but he was smart enough. With the two of them working together, Night Sorrow could rest assured. After bidding farewell to them, Night Sorrow returned to the domain chief's mansion with Mo Yuqian and the others. On the way, he promised to go to the Ninth Heaven Mystery Land after he returned from the Phoenix Ancestral Land, to find the formula for the Heavenly Phoenix ever-changing elixir for them, and try to save them as soon as possible. At the same time, he gave Mo Yuqian and the other divine emperors, who had been refined into puppets, the improved secret skill of the 33 Heaven Star Souls, hoping that they could strengthen their divine souls by themselves. When they arrived at the domain chief's mansion, Night Sorrow immediately went to look for Jing Yun and Wu Lingfei. When he saw the two of them, Night Sorrow said, "Auntie Fei Jing Yun, you should get ready. We will go to the Phoenix Ancestral Land immediately to find the opportunity that belongs to you." Night Sorrow, "I'm afraid it's not a good time to go now." Wu Lingfei looked troubled when she heard Night Sorrow's words. Auntie Fei, what's wrong with you? You still haven't recovered from that incident?" Yi Shang immediately asked worriedly. "Not really. It's just that I have a feeling that I'm going to become a divine emperor," Wu Lingfei explained. "That's good news. Auntie Fei, what resources do you need?" Night Sorrow asked happily. Wu Lingfei shook her head and said, "I don't need any resources. I just need the space of the Clear Sky Pagoda." "Good. We'll wait for you to become a divine emperor before we go together. It's not a big deal." Night Sorrow nodded and summoned Wu Lingfei into the Clear Sky Pagoda. He said, "Auntie Fei, how long do you think it will take for you to become a divine emperor? If it's too long, I'll go to the Ninth Heaven Mystery Land to find the formula for the Heavenly Phoenix ever-changing elixir for Brother Mo Yuqian and the others." "I'm not sure. It could be an instant, or it could be tens of thousands of years," Wu Lingfei replied with uncertainty. Chapter 2744. All right. I'll start my seclusion now. I won't come out until I break through. As Wu Lingfei spoke, she prepared to enter seclusion. She wouldn't come out until she became a divine lord. Night Sorrow took out some cultivation resources and handed them to her. "Aunt Fei, I've moved the King Divine Pulse in the Clear Sky Pagoda to the Domain Master's mansion. You can use these resources." All right. I won't stand on ceremony with you." Wu Lingfei took the resources from Night Sorrow and walked into a stone room to begin her seclusion. "Aunt Fei is my family. You don't have to stand on ceremony," Night Sorrow replied and left the Clear Sky Pagoda to return to the Domain Master's mansion. Sikong Chiu saw Night Sorrow and immediately asked, "Husband, how is Aunt Fei? When will she break through to the Divine Lord level?" "Aunt Fei needs an epiphany. It's not easy to tell the time," Night Sorrow answered honestly. "Husband, what are you going to do next?" "Rest quietly for a while," Sikong Chiu continued. "It's impossible for me to rest. I'm going to gather the materials to set up the Heaven and Earth Concealment Array. We only lack 3 materials. One is called the Heaven's Eye Stone, the other is called the Parasol Tree Grass, and the last is the Void Beast Bone. Once we gather these materials and activate the Heaven and Earth Concealment Array, even Dominator T and I won't be able to find the habitat of the Night Moon Empire," Night Sorrow replied. The safety of his people was the most important thing to him. After all, after he broke through to the Divine King level, he might be able to cultivate an avatar and go to the Eternal Supreme Domain. "Husband, how are we going to find them? Is there anything we can do to help?" Lin Piumiao asked. When she was in the celestial realm, her presence was very strong. However, when she was in the divine world, she was limited by her strength and had no chance to help. She was very anxious. "If Aunt Fei breaks through to the Divine Lord level, we will go to the Phoenix Ancestral Land together. Therefore, we can't be too far away. I'm going to make an announcement in the Immortal Dominion to exchange for clues about these 3 items," Night Sorrow said. The chances of finding a needle in a haystack with the help of the Night Moon Empire was very slim. He was going to mobilize all the cultivators in the immortal dominion to search. This method. When Lin Piaomiao heard this, she sighed and said, I keep feeling that after reaching the divine realm, we seem to have become cripples. I'm a little reluctant. I feel the same way, Datura said. When he heard this, Yishang smiled and said, we just arrived at the divine dimension not long ago, and we haven't accumulated sufficient strength yet. As time passes, everyone will have plenty of opportunities. But husband, you've grown so strong. Every time you fight, you have to face god kings or even sovereigns. We can't help and are very anxious in our hearts, Lin Piaomiao said unwillingly. In the end, it's because my husband's strength has increased too quickly. We can't keep up with his pace, so we're feeling anxious. Yang Lei replied. She was already used to not being able to keep up with Night Sorrow's cultivation. She didn't feel the same way as Lin Piaomiao and Datura. Night Sorrow felt that it made sense. He thought for a while and said, actually, every part of a family is important. The reason why my strength has increased so quickly is inseparable from the support you guys have given me. It's because of you that Night Sorrow is here today. If you say so, we have nothing to refute. He always smiled and poured a cup of hot tea for Night Sorrow. Let's not talk about the battles anymore. Little 13 has been fighting almost every day. Now that he's back at home, let's let him relax. Relax? Sure. Yang Lei smiled. Always said. The others laughed as well. Jingyan asked curiously, sisters, what are you laughing about? How can we help our husband relax? How? Of course, we'll help him loosen his bones and massage his legs. While we're at it, we'll play some interesting games. Yang Lei said. Although Jingyan was the oldest among them, she had experienced the least amount of battles. After marrying Night Sorrow, she didn't get intimate with him much. She didn't understand the girl's secret code. Yishang chuckled when he heard what they said. Recently, he had indeed been fighting all the time. He just wanted to relax. To him, family was the best shelter. Returning to his family made him feel relaxed. You guys are really? After Jingyan heard Yang Lei's words, she immediately replied shyly. Yang Lei smiled. Jingyan, we all have children. You're the only one who doesn't. You have to work hard tonight. Oh. Jingyan didn't know how to refute. She just shut up. However, even if she shut up now, the girls still didn't let her off at night. They kept forcing her and Night Sorrow to do the most primitive exercises. In the end, even Night Sorrow felt embarrassed. He pulled the girls over and educated them one by one. He gave them a very vivid experience. After it ended, Night Sorrow had a good night's sleep. When he woke up, he felt that his body and mind had completely recovered from the days of fighting. When he woke up, Night Sorrow found his wives lying lazily on the bed. He got up and went outside to repair Tianyan Bao and the Sky Cloud Arrow. He had been through too many battles and Tianyan Bao had been activated once. This had caused him to wear and tear. Night Sorrow used up all the sovereign stones on him to completely repair Tianyan Bao and the 9 Sky Cloud Arrows. After everything was repaired, Night Sorrow found Ho Lai, Zhu Yunxia, and Geng Chen. He told them about the matter of finding the 3 materials and asked them to give instructions to their subordinates. The 3 of them had recently reached the peak of the High God Realm and could break through to the Monarch God Realm at any time. They had encountered a bottleneck in their cultivation and had nothing to do, so they immediately went to handle this matter. Night Sorrow entered the Clear Sky Pagoda and cultivated in peace. To him, cultivating step by step wasn't very helpful in increasing his strength, but it was very good for calming his mind. After cultivating in the Clear Sky Pagoda for 100 years, Night Sorrow once again consolidated his High God Realm. After completely forging his foundation into a perfect state, Night Sorrow began to ponder a new spear art. In recent battles, the Forbidden Reincarnation spear's effects weren't very good. He prepared to research a more powerful spear art. After a long period of pondering and research, as well as Lin Piaomiao and Jingyan's guidance, combined with Tianyan Bao's state, Night Sorrow finally comprehended a new spear art. Heavenly Cloud Reincarnation Spear. The name was very simple, and the spear art wasn't very flashy. However, when the heavenly reincarnation spear was used, it would borrow some of Tianyun Bao's sovereign realm strength. Its power was very terrifying. It was clearly more powerful than an ordinary divine king's attack. However, the prerequisite was that Tianyun Bao was present. Chapter 2745. Is there good news? When Ho Lai and the other two arrived, their faces were filled with joy. Night Sorrow immediately deduced. Haha. You guessed right. We received news that a void beast has appeared in the silent ocean of our immortal dominion. Don't we need its bones? We can go hunt it. Gongchen said with a smile. The three of them did not expect the news to come so easily. They did not even have to ask, and they already received useful information. Hearing this, Yishang nodded with a smile and said, It really is good news. Let's move out immediately. No rush. We have already asked. The Silent Ocean is a very special place. Everyone needs to make some preparations. Zhu Yunxia immediately explained. You can't fly in the Silent Ocean. You can only rely on ships to travel there. So we need to prepare a few extremely sturdy ships. What kind of ships do we need? Night Sorrow asked. We need at least a king grade one. Otherwise, it won't be able to withstand the baptism of the waves. Zhu Yunxia told Night Sorrow about the situation. A king-grade ship is really not easy to build. A king-grade ship made Night Sorrow feel a little awkward. After thinking for a while, he said, We definitely don't have any ready-made ones. We can only build them ourselves. I should be able to build one, but I need to go to Brother Jinye's residence to find some materials. Wait for me here. Since this is the news that everyone found out, let's go together. Haha. The three of us also have the same idea. Ho Lai, Zhu Yunxia, and Gongchen said in unison. Alright. Wait for me here. I'll be back soon. After Night Sorrow finished speaking, he went to the Divine King Jinye's residence. When he met him, he mentioned the king-grade materials. Alright. Let's go to the treasury together. Jinye was very happy that Night Sorrow had come. He brought him directly to the treasury. After finding the relevant materials, Night Sorrow immediately raised the grade of the 8-dragon cauldron to king grade. Then he used it to build a king grade battleship. Once the 3 king grade warships were completed, a terrifying lightning tribulation was immediately summoned. However, to the current Night Sorrow, the thunder tribulation of a king grade divine artifact was no threat at all. He took the 3 battleships and passed through the thunder tribulation together. Creating 3 identical warships was a precautionary measure. When he returned to the domain chief's manor, Ho Lai, Zhu Yunxia, and Gongchen were all waiting for him. Standing with them was Yin Tianyi. At this time, although Yin Tianyi was a lower divine lord, his aura was extremely powerful. The bloodline in his body had been more or less opened. In a few days, he would catch up to or even surpass his ancestor. Wait for me for a while. I'll say goodbye to my family, and then we'll set off. Night Sorrow knew that the 4 of them were filled with fighting spirit, so he didn't say anything. After returning to the house and saying goodbye to his wives, he went to the Horn people and brought Cao Linger over. Cao Linger's 2 horns were outstanding existences in the entire Horn people. It was extremely helpful for treasure hunting and the like. After gathering, Night Sorrow temporarily put Cao Linger away in the vast heaven pagoda. He brought the other 4 people and flew towards the Soundless Sea according to the location marked on the map. Rushing to the edge of the Soundless Sea, Night Sorrow brought everyone to a nearby city and came to a restaurant. Sitting in a private room on the 2nd floor, he handed over 20 divine crystals to the waiter and opened his mouth to ask, Little brother, do you know about the void beast in the Soundless Sea? The matter blew up so big, I definitely know about it. But it's impossible to know about it. After all, with this lowly one's strength, I don't have the ability to investigate to the bottom. The waiter nodded and bowed. Tell me what you know. Ho Lai, who drank a mouthful of tea, opened his mouth and said. His voice was relatively loud, scaring the waiter until he trembled. Following that, he said, I heard that the void beast is in the depths of the Soundless Sea. It specializes in hunting high deity realm and divine lord realm cultivators for food. I heard that it has already eaten 5 to 6 divine lords and several hundred high deities. Eating so many people, there are still people going? Zhu Yunxia heard that so many people had already died and asked somewhat uncomfortably. Sigh. People die in love. Birds die in pursuit of food. Don't all of you have the same thoughts? Otherwise, what's the point of asking about this, right? The waiter nodded and bowed as he said. Seeing that Ho Lai had the intention to get angry, he immediately opened his mouth and said, "It's not that this lowly one is speaking inauspiciously. This lowly one is saying this because I received money from several lords. Otherwise, I wouldn't speak out to warn." "No matter. You continue." At this time, Gung Chen pressed Ho Lai and said. Hearing this, the waiter nodded his head and continued. "If dear guests truly wish to go and investigate to the bottom of things, go to Taoist temple. This lowly one suggests that you all go to Chrysanthemum Dao right, and meet Taoist No Hair. I heard that he entered the Soundless Sea and retreated unscathed. Chrysanthemum Dao right, Taoist No Hair? What kind of name is that?" Zhu Yunxia felt a chill run down her spine. Taoist No Hair, also known as the Hairless Divine Lord, is ranked 79th on the Divine Lord list. Chrysanthemum Dao right is his territory. The waiter explained and continued. However, I heard that his temper has been a little strange recently. If you all go and meet him, you must be careful. All right. We understand. Go and prepare the food and wine. At this time, Night Sorrow opened his mouth to send the waiter away and said, "Do you all think that there's a need to meet Taoist No Hair? I feel that there's a need to meet him. If he really entered the Soundless Sea, he must have some understanding of the environment there." Zhu Yunxia said seriously. Yun Tianyi also said, "I also feel that there's a need to meet him. After all, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated." "All right. Then let's meet him," Night Sorrow said decisively. After finishing their meal, they asked the waiter about the Chrysanthemum Dao Right's location and rushed over. After arriving at the Chrysanthemum Dao Right, Night Sorrow and the rest found that it was simply a sea of people. At the entrance of the Dao Right, there were Feather God Realm cultivators selling tickets, saying that Taoist No Hair was going to open an on-site training for the cultivators heading to the Soundless Sea. "I'll buy the tickets and see what he has to say," Yun Tianyi said and went to line up, spending 500 divine crystals to buy 5 tickets. The group entered the Chrysanthemum Dao Right and waited for about 2 hours. The Taoist No Hair, ranked 79th on the Divine Lord list, wore a yellow Taoist robe and appeared in front of everyone. Cough cough. Even if you don't say it, this poor Taoist knows why you're here. It's for that evil creature in the Soundless Sea. After the Taoist No Hair appeared, he immediately brought up the main topic. That void beast. It's extremely terrifying and has the ability to cut through the void. If you use your movement technique in front of it, it's very likely that you'll be cut into pieces when you pass through the void. At that time, this Divine Lord faced such a huge monster with the determination to die. Determination to die, and then? Chapter 2746. Then Sir Divine Lord will speak if you have to pay an opening fee. Taoist Wu Mao did not speak anymore. A boy who looked to be in his teens walked to his side and said, "Didn't you collect an entrance fee?" Hearing the boy's words, the thousands of cultivators present immediately rebuked him. There were close to 10,000 cultivators present, and the dojo had already collected hundreds of thousands of deity crystals. Now that he had opened his mouth and continued to extort deity crystals, many people were furious. This is Sir Divine Lord's rule. Sir will suffer a backlash if he divulges heaven's secrets. Look at him, his hair and eyebrows are all gone. The boy explained. Ho Lai and Yun Tianyi were very unhappy and wanted to go up on stage. At this moment, Night Sorrow stopped them and threw a space sachet to Grand Supreme, saying, "The deity crystals here are enough for you to speak and explain the matter clearly." Taoist Wu Mao took the space sachet and used his divine soul to sense it. His eyes immediately lit up. He transmitted his voice to Night Sorrow. "Brother, how about I tell you in private?" "No need. Just say it." Night Sorrow did not transmit his voice and spoke directly. "Brother, you're a righteous man." "That's right. "You hairless old Taoist, you should learn from him." Some people present immediately reprimanded him. Taoist Wu Mao, who was not moved at all, continued, "At that time, I thought I was going to die, but at the crucial moment, I discovered the void beast's fatal weakness. It's afraid of fire. As long as it gets close and uses a fire elemental secret art, I will obtain unexpected results. If the fire elemental secret art is strong enough, I can definitely protect myself in the soundless ocean." What kind of environment is it in the depths of the soundless ocean? Knight Sorrow frowned slightly. He could sense that Taoist Wu Mao's words were half true and half false. Some of it was true, but most of it was not. This allowed him to confirm one thing. This Taoist Wu Mao, although he looked mysterious and greedy, had indeed been to the soundless ocean. This was a huge gain. The depths of the soundless ocean? When Taoist Wu Mao heard this question, he pondered for a moment and said, "In the depths of the soundless ocean, the surface of the sea is extremely calm. There is no wind or waves. The surface of the water is like a mirror, and there is no sound. This is also the origin of the soundless ocean's name." In other words, the depths of the soundless ocean's hearing of the soundless ocean? Taoist Wu Mao nodded and said, "That's right. Therefore, it is very dangerous to travel in the depths of the soundless ocean. But if it is to soundless ocean, be prepared." These words caused Yishang's frown to deepen. He chided, "Speak the truth." As he cultivated the power of virtue, he could sense that Taoist Wu Mao's words were becoming more and more fake. How did you know?" Hearing Yishang's rebuke, Taoist Wu Mao was momentarily dazed, but he quickly recovered and said, "The soundless sea's ability to block sound and divine sense is true." What else do you know? Tell me everything." After all, he was the domain lord. Knight Sorrow felt that it was necessary to let the cultivators of the immortal domain know the truth about the soundless ocean. He did not want them to overestimate themselves and continue to throw their lives away. After hearing Taoist Wu Mao's words, he could tell that the soundless ocean was extremely dangerous. At the very least, it was not a place that ordinary godlords could enter. Even those on the godlord list might not be able to escape unscathed. At this moment, Taoist Wu Mao said, "The most important thing to do in the soundless ocean is to prepare an extremely sturdy ship. Otherwise, if the ship is destroyed by the beasts, we can only swim in the ocean because there is no way to fly." "What grade of ship do we need?" someone asked. "If possible, it would be best if it is made of Dominator-grade materials, because even King-grade ships can be destroyed." Taoist Wu Mao glanced at Knight Sorrow and said with a serious expression, "A ship that requires Dominator-grade materials?" Hearing Taoist Wu Mao's words, Yin Tianyi immediately asked, "Then how did you survive back then?" "The main reason this Taoist survived is because I have a very powerful flame. Also, this Taoist has a king-grade weapon that can be used as a ship. It just so happened that when the ship was destroyed by the beasts, it saved this Taoist's life." Taoist Wu Mao explained with some embarrassment. Then he took out his god-grade weapon from his spatial weapon. It was actually a lid. This lid, after flipping it over, could be used as a ship. This is the original lid of the earthen jar? Seeing this lid, Knight Sorrow's heart shook. After killing the divine King Bei Ning, the broken Dominator-grade earthen jar fell into his hands. The earthen jar was too damaged and could not be repaired like Tianyan Bao's. He had placed it in his spatial weapon, and was prepared to use it at a critical moment. Now that he saw the lid of the earthen jar, he was a little uneasy. He thought to himself, if the earthen jar and lid are combined and repaired, wouldn't it be another Dominator-grade weapon? This lid is made of a very high-grade material. Yin Tianyi, who saw the lid in front of her and was reminded by her ancestor, immediately realized that the lid in front of her was not simple and praised it. Although this divine lord is not sure what material this lid is made of, it is definitely sturdy. Otherwise, it would not be able to ensure that I leave the soundless ocean safely. Taoist Wu Mao smiled proudly and then said something shocking. However, this Taoist has calculated that this divine lord's fate with this Dominator-grade weapon will end today. Therefore I am prepared to auction it. Everyone present, If you want to enter the soundless ocean to hunt void beasts or find other opportunities, you might as well auction this Taoist lid away. What? You are actually taking out such a good item to auction? Hearing Taoist Wu Mao's words, Yun Tianyi, who already knew what grade this item was, immediately shouted in surprise. Regardless of whether it is good or bad, it is fate that obtains it. Since it is fate, there will be meeting and parting. Today, this Taoist's fate with this lid has ended, so I am prepared to give it to one of you present. After Taoist Wu Mao said this, he looked at Night Sorrow and said, You are righteous and generous, so why don't you bid for this lid of mine? How about it? Hearing this, even Night Sorrow was a little uncertain about the other party's intentions. He asked in return, What price are you prepared to sell it for? 10 million deity crystals is not too little. Even 100 million deity crystals is not too little. Taoist Wu Mao said with a smile. Yi Shang felt a bit disgusted when he saw the greedy smile on his face. He could feel that this Taoist Wu Mao was not an honest person. It would not be easy for him to obtain the lid in front of him. However, since the other party had asked for a price, Night Sorrow thought for a moment and said, I will bid half a king-class divine vein. After all, this was the virtuous divine lord. Night Sorrow did not want to treat him unfairly in terms of price, so he directly offered half a king-class divine vein as the price. Although it was still not as valuable as a portion of a Dominator-grade divine weapon, it was already a shocking price. Chapter 2747. Do you recognize what this is? Taoist Wu Mao immediately sent a voice transmission to Night Sorrow. He had not expected to get such a bid. I recognize it. It is a part of the sovereign divine weapon. It is a priceless treasure. However, I am offering half a king-class divine vein, which is also valuable. If you think it is not enough, we can discuss it again. Night Sorrow said. He had attained his Tao through merit, and did not want to take advantage of resources. For example, he could bring a few others into the dojo and save a few hundred deity gems. However, he did not do so. This was a kind of boldness. Since you recognize it, I can't sell it to you. Taoist Wu Mao replied and looked at the others who were bidding. After Night Sorrow opened half a king-class divine vein, they all fell silent. No one could offer such a price. After waiting for a while, Taoist Wu Mao saw that no one else spoke. He said, I said that I only like deity gems and not divine veins. You can continue bidding and see who can offer more deity gems. You don't want the divine vein? How many deity gems do you want? One of the Sir Gods asked immediately. Since it is an auction, you can name any price you want. Taoist Wu Mao smiled. When he looked at Night Sorrow, a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Brother Yi, what is going on with him? The value of a divine vein is much higher than deity gems. He doesn't want it and wants to auction deity gems. Yun Tianyi saw the current situation and sent a voice transmission to Night Sorrow. If I am not wrong, he just wants to cheat deity gems. He has no intention of selling the lid. A king-class divine vein is too valuable. He is afraid that he can't afford it. Therefore, he chose not to buy it. Night Sorrow replied after thinking for a while. At the same time, he opened the eye of the sea serpent and observed Taoist Wu Mao. He realized that Taoist Wu Mao's appearance was not disguised. Although he looked benevolent at the moment, he was a shifty-eyed person. I understand now. Taoist Wu Mao is not really trying to sell the lid. He just wants to cheat deity gems and then find a chance to escape. My king-class divine vein is too valuable. He won't dare to cheat me. Night Sorrow said after thinking for a while. Should we expose him or wait until he is about to escape? Ho Lai immediately sent a voice transmission to Yi Shang. Right now, we're just speculating. We don't have any real evidence. We can only wait until he's about to escape and catch him red-handed. Yi Shang said. If I'm not wrong, there must be a long-distance teleportation array here. Then what should we do? Yun Tianyi glanced at Yi Shang. However, he didn't speak directly. He also used voice transmission. As the domain lord, I can't just stand by and watch someone swindle people in the immortal domain. Once Taoist Wu Mao activated the teleportation array, he would be teleported to Night Sorrow's array. Night Sorrow paid another 100 deity gems and returned to the Dao Hall. Taoist Wu Mao was still auctioning the extremely valuable ruler divine weapon. Many people were bidding crazily. They felt that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Tianyi, you bid too. Let's see what he is up to. Yi Shang sent a voice transmission to Yin Tianyi. At the moment, none of them were participating in the bidding. All right. I will bid a price that no one can afford. Nominally, I will bid for the lid. Yin Tianyi nodded and immediately joined the bidding. At this moment, the price of the lid had already reached 30 million divine crystals. This was an astronomical figure. Not many people present could afford it. The bidders were probably going to use some items as deity gems. 31 million. Yin Tianyi shouted a number when no one else was bidding. Kid, are you looking for trouble with me? Do you want to die? After Yin Tianyi spoke, a burly man with a scar on his face immediately transmitted his voice to her. He was obviously very strong. He did not seem to be inferior to Taoist Wu Mao. Yin Tianyi was not afraid at all. Everyone has the right to bid for a good item. Who do you think you are? How dare you threaten me? Good. You are very good. When this matter is over, let's find a place to spar. The Divine Lord said angrily. Let's spar then. I'm not afraid of you. Yin Tianyi replied non-committally when she heard the other party's threatening words. Taoist Wu Mao saw that no one was bidding and said, if no one is bidding, I will sell it to the brother who bid 31 million. Humph. I'm not bidding anymore. The cultivator who transmitted his voice to Yin Tianyi snorted and did not continue bidding. The others also fell silent. No one continued to bid. Night Sorrow was a little surprised. He said, the value of a ruler divine weapon is far more than that. Even if these people could not afford the price, they would not be behaving like this. Look at them. Everyone seems to be very satisfied with this result. That seems to be the case. It seems that the people who bid are quite satisfied with the result in front of them. After hearing Night Sorrow's voice transmission, Zhu Yunxiao immediately observed her surroundings. She realized that none of the people who bid looked regretful. Everyone looked as if they had won the bid. It was very strange. Could it be that Taoist Wu Mao has some kind of method to confuse people? Night Sorrow speculated. However, he did not feel the influence of the array or the fluctuation of the divine soul. After pondering for a moment, Night Sorrow transmitted his voice to Yin Tianyi. Since we won the bid, let's ask him to trade. Okay. However, I don't have that many deity crystals on me at the moment. Yin Tianyi said, a little embarrassed. When he bid, he felt no pressure at all. However, he obviously did not have that many deity crystals now. I have about enough. Don't worry and communicate with him. Night Sorrow instructed. Recently, he had killed many divine kings and ransacked Bei Ning's divine king residence. He had a huge amount of deity crystals on him. I'm relieved to hear that. Brother Yi, don't worry. After the item is traded, I will give it to you. After all, it was bought with your wealth. Yin Tianyi transmitted his voice to Night Sorrow and said seriously. Then, he looked at Taoist Wu Mao on the stage. He said, now that no one else is bidding, the item is mine, right? At this time, Night Sorrow reminded him. I can feel that he will not hand over the real ruler divine weapon. Be careful. Haha. You are the winner of the bid. Of course, the item is yours. We will exchange the money and the item at the same time. Taoist Wu Mao smiled and handed over the lid in his hand. Chapter 2748. It's so easy to get it. Why does it feel so strange? Yin Tianyi held the lid that Taoist Wu Mao handed over. She felt that it was fake, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. Hence, she handed the lid to Night Sorrow and said, Brother Yi, why don't you take a look at the authenticity of this lid? All right. I'll study it. When Night Sorrow touched the lid, he felt that the aura was exactly the same as the jar in his spatial artifact. He couldn't tell what was wrong with it even with the sea serpent's eye. However, everyone felt that something was wrong. Getting half of a Dominator divine artifact so easily was like a fantasy. Is it related to the environment here? Look at the others. They all look very satisfied. Could it be that we experienced the same thing as we did? Zhu Yunxiao observed her surroundings and found that it was very quiet. There wasn't any noise at all. She felt that this didn't make sense. It's very strange. Night Sorrow calmed down and thought for a moment before saying, I think I can guess what's going on. Brother Yi, what's going on? Don't keep us in suspense. Yin Tianyi immediately asked. Night Sorrow looked around and transmitted his voice. If I'm not wrong, we're in the space of a Dominator divine artifact. The aura I feel here is naturally the aura of a real Dominator. Presumably, as long as we get out, we'll be able to tell that it's not real. But we're in the space of a Dominator divine artifact. It should be very difficult to get out, right? Then the array you set up just now, is it also? Gongchen didn't finish his sentence because this matter was extremely terrifying. Today, not only would they lose money, but their lives might also be in danger. Ha ha ha. Thank you for your deity crystals. This poor Taoist is leaving. At this moment, Taoist Wu Mao's voice sounded. Then everyone was teleported out. After Taoist Wu Mao teleported Yi Shang and the others out, they found themselves in a boundless ocean. Holai Lika shouted, Quick! Boat! Summon the boat. Good. Everyone get on the boat. Linger, come out as well. We might already be in the silent ocean. Yi Shang opened the sea serpent's eye. He looked around at the storm, lightning, and waves. He immediately took out the king-level halberd he had forged himself. After everyone had boarded the ship, Night Sorrow asked Cao Ling, Linger, can you sense anything? Linger, give it a try. Cao Linger replied to Night Sorrow and used the special ability of her horns to sense her surroundings. Not long after, she replied, There's a slight aura of a Dominator-grade divine artifact nearby, but it's not obvious. Is this what you sensed? Zhu Yunxia immediately handed the lid that Yun Tianyi bid for to Cao Linger and asked. At this moment, everyone could already sense that the Dominator-grade aura on the lid was very faint and almost undetectable. Cao Linger looked at the lid and shook her head. It's not the aura on it, but it's very similar. Linger, point in the direction for Big Brother Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow said after hearing Cao Linger's words. He knew that everyone had been tricked this time. He originally thought that he had the situation under control, but he had been tricked by the hairless Taoist. With the help of the Dominator-grade divine artifact, he had successfully shaken off the distance. At the same time, most of the people who had been thrown out of the Dominator-grade divine artifact by the hairless Taoist took out their prepared boats. Good. Big Brother Night Sorrow, that aura is coming from the north. It's getting weaker and weaker, Cao Linger said timidly. She could sense that everyone present was in a bad mood. Linger, don't be afraid. They're not targeting you, Night Sorrow said and steered the battleship towards the north. Just like that, they chased for a day and a night. Cao Linger suddenly said, Big Brother Night Sorrow, that aura is getting stronger and stronger. It should be at the bottom of the sea. At the bottom of the sea? Night Sorrow opened his sea serpent eye and realized that he couldn't see what the bottom of the sea looked like. He looked at everyone present and asked, What do you guys think? Should we go down and check it out? Go down. We have to go down. Otherwise, how can we accept being cheated of so many deity crystals? Yin Tianyi said. He was in a bad mood. What do you guys think? Night Sorrow looked at Ho Lai, Zhu Yunxia and Gongchen. I think we should go down and check it out. Otherwise, how can we accept it? Ho Lai and Yin Tianyi had the same idea. Zhu Yunxia and Gongchen nodded. They couldn't accept being cheated like this. Good. Then we'll take the risk and check it out. Night Sorrow said and said. Just in case, you guys enter the vast heaven pagoda first. I'll control the warship to go down. Actually, he was similarly uncomfortable in his heart. The scam just now was actually very obvious. But even he didn't see through the other party's trick. This made people somewhat depressed. Okay, let's enter the vast heaven pagoda. Everyone didn't have any objections to Night Sorrow's suggestion, and immediately entered the vast heaven pagoda. Night Sorrow entered the warship's inner cabin, and let the warship dive straight into the sea. Just as they started diving, the surroundings immediately fell into pitch-black darkness. Night Sorrow opened his sea serpent eye and looked outside the warship. He could only observe a distance of 1,000 meters. To a divine lord, this was simply a blind state. If they encountered a sneak attack, there was no time to react at all. Big Brother Night Sorrow, after we went down, that sovereign-rank divine artifact aura became even stronger. Cao Ling who stayed in the cabin with Night Sorrow, said somewhat excitedly. On her horn, ripple-like light constantly emitted, spreading out to the surroundings. Following that, Night Sorrow followed Cao Ling's guidance and rushed toward the location where the sovereign aura was emitting. Boom. It was just that not long after, the warship's hull encountered a violent collision. Night Sorrow released his divine soul power and investigated a bit. He discovered that the one who attacked the warship was a gigantic shark. This shark was shockingly at the divine lord level, but it should not have transformed. It looked like it didn't have any spirituality, but it was extremely dangerous. A divine lord level demonic beast won't cause much harm to the king level warship. Let's continue going down. Night Sorrow, who was pondering whether to leave the warship and launch an attack on the shark, thought about it and gave up this idea. He controlled the warship to continue diving. After passing through a layer of cloud-like mist, Night Sorrow and Cao Ling discovered that the world in front of them had suddenly bid farewell to darkness. The shark demonic beast that had been following them had also disappeared. In its place was an underwater world that seemed like a pure land. There was clear seawater, large patches of coral, and small fish and jellyfish that were constantly swaying their bodies. Chapter 2749. This place is so peaceful. It's really a paradise at the bottom of the sea. Using the sea serpent's eye to observe the surrounding Night Sorrow, he opened his mouth and sighed. He discovered that the scenery before his eyes was all real. Furthermore, he could confirm that this place was not the interior of a sovereign-rank divine artifact. Looking at the fake cover in his hand again, it did not have that kind of realistic aura. However, after observing for a while, Night Sorrow did not discover any traces of the hairless Taoist. Everything at the bottom of the sea was so peaceful and auspicious. One could not see any waves at all. At this time, Night Sorrow looked at Cao Ling and said, Ling can you still sense anything? Yes. Ling can sense a strong sovereign-rank divine artifact aura, as well as a large number of divine crystals aura. At the same time that Cao Ling responded, she pointed at the location of the coral group and said, Okay, let's go over and take a look. Cao Ling's talent was very good. When she said such words, Night Sorrow felt that the hairless Taoist should be in the coral group. He immediately controlled the battleship and arrived above the coral group. Looking out from the battleship, he still could not see any clues. But Cao Ling said with certainty, that aura is definitely below the coral group. Since Ling said it's below, then it's definitely below. You enter the vast heaven pagoda. Big Brother Night Sorrow, prepare to leave the battleship and investigate. Night Sorrow said and let Cao Ling enter the vast heaven pagoda. While he put away the battleship, held the Samsara heavenly halberd in hand, and swam towards the location of the coral group. After approaching the coral group, Night Sorrow discovered that these corals were very special. Not only could they block aura, they could also block divine soul perception. At such a close distance, he still could not use divine soul power to investigate below the coral group. Using the sea serpent's eye also could not see through at all. Big Brother Night Sorrow, how is it? Did you find it? Ling can't sense any aura in the vast heaven pagoda anymore. Cao Ling in the vast heaven pagoda asked somewhat worriedly. Big Brother is fine. I haven't found anything yet, but I'm looking forward to finding something later. While Night Sorrow responded, he began to wander around the huge group of corals, paying close attention to every detail. The entire coral reef covered an area of about 50,000 kilometers. To an ordinary person, it was extremely large, but to a divine lord like Night Sorrow who had powerful movement techniques, it was not considered large at all. Not long after, he had explored half of the corals. At this time, Night Sorrow's eyes were suddenly attracted by a dim light. A terrifying green light suddenly appeared on the originally peaceful seabed. Night Sorrow, who was standing among the corals, saw the dim light flash by and immediately thought of a name. Void beast. That's right. It was a void beast that had just streaked across the coral without noticing him. To be more precise, it was a divine king-level void beast. A void beast with such strength could only be described as terrifying. This was also the reason why Knight Sorrow didn't immediately attack. It would not be easy for him to successfully kill such a powerful void beast with his own strength. Ordinary void beasts had stronger combat strength than cultivators of the same level. Looks like this is indeed the seabed of the Soundless Sea. But why is the void beast so powerful? Seeing the void beast pass by, Knight Sorrow did not immediately attack. This was not because he was afraid, but because he was prepared to make a move later. Furthermore, the void beast's range of activity was basically fixed, but if the hairless Taoist escaped, the 30 million divine crystals would be completely wasted. The priorities of these two matters were different. After the void beast left, Knight Sorrow continued to search the coral reef, and finished searching the coral reef that stretched for 50,000 kilometers. He did not find any trace of the hairless Taoist. Knight Sorrow immediately used the Samsara halberd to dig into the seabed. He dug for about 10,000 kilometers. He used the sea serpent eye to discover a concealment array. After using some means to break it, he came to a forest with birds flying everywhere. He could also clearly sense the aura of a sovereign-level divine artifact. How is this the seabed? It's a paradise. This is completely a true paradise. Yi Shang immediately sighed in admiration when he saw the scenery of this small world. There was shockingly a king-level divine range here, and there were mountains and rivers. At the location of the mountain peak, a palace was currently being built. The material used to build the palace was shockingly square divine crystals. There must be the divine crystals that we were cheated of inside. This hairless Taoist is really extravagant. In the vast heaven pagoda, seeing the palace that was being built, Yin Tianyi immediately transmitted. Extravagant or not, it doesn't matter. But swindling people in my immortal divine realm. This matter must be dealt with. After Knight Sorrow finished replying to Yin Tianyi, he looked in a direction and said, "Since you discovered that I'm here, Taoist priest, please show yourself." He could determine that he was already discovered by the hairless Taoist. "I knew long ago that you were not simple, but I didn't expect that you could actually track me here. This poor Taoist really underestimated you." The hairless Taoist walked out of a Taoist temple at the foot of the mountain, and looked in Knight Sorrow's direction. He snorted coldly and said, "If this poor Taoist had known, this poor Taoist would have trapped you in the space of the Dominator artifact. You think too much. You can't trap me with just half a Dominator artifact in your hands." After replying confidently, Knight Sorrow used his divine sense to scan the hairless Taoist and the others in the small world. Other than the hairless Taoist, there were 3 other Sir Gods. They were all beautiful women, but their strength wasn't strong. He guessed that these 3 women were the hairless Taoist's wives. "You are very confident. If I'm not wrong, you must be the Dominator of the immortal divine realm, Knight Sorrow?" the hairless Taoist said as he sized up Knight Sorrow. Naturally, he had heard of the commotion in the immortal divine realm, but he had never seen Knight Sorrow in person. "That's me. You swindled me in my divine realm. How do you think this matter should be resolved?" Knight Sorrow looked at the hairless Taoist. "How? At most, I'll return the deity crystals that I swindled from you," the hairless Taoist said nonchalantly. It was obvious that he wasn't afraid of Knight Sorrow. Or rather, he didn't think much of him. "If you keep up this attitude, today's matter is going to get serious." Knight Sorrow's body emitted a strong fighting spirit. He was ready to attack. "Haha. In the immortal divine realm, you are the Dominator. But in this poor Dominator artifact, you are nothing. Haven't you noticed that you've already entered my artifact?" Taoist Wu Mao said with a grin. "So what if I'm in your Dominator artifact?" Knight Sorrow replied nonchalantly. He was sure that he had entered the world of the Dominator artifact, but he didn't show any fear. "Now that you have entered this poor Dominator artifact, regardless of whether you are the Dominator artifact or not, you have to submit to me." Chapter 2750. Originally, Knight Sorrow did not think much of Taoist Wu Mao. At most, he was just a liar. However, when he laughed, he gave off an evil vibe. That smile seemed to come from the depths of hell. It was not something a human could have. However, Night Sorrow could not see anything when he used the sea serpent eye to observe. This was because he was in the internal space of the Dominator deity weapon, and his senses were blocked. This was the special ability of the Dominator deity weapon. Even he could not resist it. I wonder what will happen if I take out the main body of the clay jar. After thinking for a while, Night Sorrow took out the clay jar from his spatial equipment without hesitation. In an instant, the clay jar emitted a gentle light. With the essence of this light, Yishang immediately used the sea serpent's eye to see that the hairless Taoist wasn't a Taoist but a clam spirit. Moreover, it was an extremely dark type of abyss black clam. The other 3 divine lords were the same type. So you are a clam? I thought only dragons liked gold and silver. I did not expect a black clam like you to be the same. After seeing the black clam's true form, Night Sorrow immediately attacked with his Samsara halberd. So you have the other half of the Dominator deity weapon. You have searched high and low for it, only to find it without any effort. Taoist Wu Mao's eyes lit up when he realized that the clay jar was in Night Sorrow's hands. He shouted, "My beloved concubines, attack! As long as we get the clay jar, we can become the overlords of the Silent Ocean." I did not expect such a good thing to happen today. Hearing Taoist Wu Mao's words, one of the Sir Gods looked at Night Sorrow excitedly. When he realized that he had the strength of a lower Sir God, he immediately said disdainfully, "With only the strength of a lower Sir God, the 4 of us will be like a lion hunting a rabbit." Hee. Don't underestimate him. After all, he is the Dominator of the immortal divine realm, Night Sorrow. He also has a Dominator deity weapon. Taoist Wu Mao reminded as he took out a shell-shaped deity weapon to block the Samsara halberd's attack. However, he had underestimated Night Sorrow's attack. The Samsara halberd shattered the shell-shaped deity weapon. What? He is so strong. Husband, are you alright? No Hair Taoist's other wife said in shock when she saw how terrifying Night Sorrow's attack was. She was the same as the previous one. She despised Night Sorrow. I'm fine, but a single strike from him can destroy a Divine Lord-level divine artifact. We must be careful, Taoist Wu Mao said before continuing. Everyone, take out your trump card and fight with your Emperor-grade artifacts. Yes. Husband. The 3 Sir Gods responded one after another, each taking out a king-grade divine artifact. The hairless Taoist held the cover of the ruler-grade god weapon in his hand. It was obvious that he was taking Night Sorrow seriously. You've accumulated quite a lot. Looks like you've amassed quite a bit of wealth. Night Sorrow mocked when he saw that the 4 of them each had a king-grade god artifact. Some of them even had a sovereign-grade god artifact. When Taoist Wu Mao heard this, he smiled coldly and said, "Have you thought of retreating after seeing our abundant accumulation? I'm telling you it's too late. Today you will die here, and I will completely repair the ruler-grade god weapon and merge the 2 into one. How dare an evil creature like you call yourself a Taoist? Don't insult the word Taoist." Night Sorrow complained. He immediately activated the Trayastrimsa battle secret technique and shot the forbidden reincarnation spear at one of the female cultivators. This was no longer his strongest spear technique, but he felt that it was enough to deal with the female cultivator in front of him. Kill. 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 Faced with Night Sorrow's attack, the beautiful female cultivator immediately turned into a dark figure. Her pitch-black appearance made one's heart palpitate. She slashed at the heavenly reincarnation halberd. The king-grade god sword in her hand seemed to have grown eyes. It split into 9 sword lights and surrounded the light from the heavenly reincarnation halberd. What's the use of just binding the spear light? The essence of this move is the power of lightning and the power of the attack. Night Sorrow sneered when the spear light was bound. He activated the power of lightning in this move. The lightning, which was mixed with the power of merit, struck the female cultivator. The female cultivator screamed and was sent flying by the power of merit. The black on the surface of her body was gradually purified and turned white. Night Sorrow looked coldly at the hairless Taoist. So she wasn't a dark creature, but her soul was corrupted by you. Yes, so what? The hairless Taoist smiled maliciously. The Dark Abyss invasion of the immortal dominion has just begun. No matter who it is, anyone who tries to invade the immortal dominion will be attacked crazily. Today, you will die without a doubt. Knight Sorrow was shocked to hear the hairless Taoist's words. So there was such a force waiting to invade the immortal dominion. He had thought that only the Divine King, who was under the ruler, could cause an impact to the immortal dominion. Now it seemed that he had been too optimistic. You think too much. The cultivators of the realm of the gods are too weak to resist the invasion of the Dark Abyss. Our methods are more powerful than you can imagine, the hairless Taoist said confidently. He then used the ruler weapon in his hand to attack. Although the ruler weapon's lid was only half of the weapon, it was almost undamaged. The attack contained a trace of the ruler's power. Since you are so strong, why don't you show me? Knight Sorrow knew that he couldn't use the Samsara halberd to block this attack. He immediately activated the jar and used the energy within to resist the lid. With a loud boom, the two of them were almost evenly matched. However, the lid in the hairless Taoist's hand was undamaged. The damaged jar in Knight Sorrow's hand was heavily damaged. The cracks on it were even more severe, as if it would shatter at any moment. Looks like the jar won't last much longer. Knight Sorrow, who was controlling the jar, could clearly feel the weapon in his hand crying out in pain. It seemed to be unwilling to give up, but there was no other way. The damage to the jar was too severe. This wasn't a problem with the lid. When Knight Sorrow had obtained the jar, it was already damaged to this extent. Perhaps it was already damaged when the Divine King, Bei Ning, found it. Obviously, he had suffered a very serious blow in the past. Don't use my weapon again. If it breaks, I will make all the living beings in the immortal dominion pay with their blood. Seeing that the jar was about to be damaged, the hairless Taoist snorted coldly and threatened. You don't know what's good for you. There are less than 7 people in the entire realm of the gods who are strong enough to threaten me. In the face of the hairless Taoist's threat, Yishang replied disdainfully. However, he still put away the jar. Chapter 2751. Aren't you the one who put away the sovereign artifact anyway? Taoist Wu Mao laughed sinisterly when he saw Knight Sorrow keeping the jar of the ruler artifact. He ordered, set up the formation. The way he saw it, once Knight Sorrow put away the jar, he would definitely fall into the maze again, and not be able to tell what was going on. Yes, after Taoist Wu Mao gave the order, his 3 wives immediately responded to him from 3 other directions. Abyss 4 Evils formation. After receiving a response from his 3 wives, Taoist Hairless immediately set up a new trapping array within the small world of the sovereign artifact. After the formation was activated, it released a thick black gas that enveloped Knight Sorrow. Is this a technique from the Dark Abyss? Knight Sorrow opened his sea serpent eye to see through the thick black gas. However, he couldn't see through the thick fog. Therefore, he released his divine spirit power to sense his surroundings. However, he quickly realized that it was useless. Don't waste your time. This formation came from the ruler artifact. How can a monarch god like you break it? Taoist Wu Mao laughed proudly when he saw Knight Sorrow get lost in the formation. His laughter sounded like it came from all directions to Knight Sorrow. It was very blurry and he couldn't figure out where it came from. Taoist Wu Mao's 3 wives also laughed sinisterly. In the thick black gas, they completely reverted to the appearance of abyss creatures. On the other side, the Divine Crystal Palace was still being built. Its height was constantly increasing. Knight Sorrow naturally couldn't sense this. He was in the black fog and didn't panic. However, he hadn't figured out how to break the formation yet. Yin Tianyi, who was in the clear sky pagoda, saw that Knight Sorrow was in a predicament and immediately asked anxiously, Brother Yi, are you okay? I feel that this formation isn't simple. It gives off an extremely sinister feeling. It's definitely not a simple trapping formation. I have this feeling too. However, I'm not sure what will descend. Let's take it one step at a time. This kind of dark aura might be able to deal with others, but if you want to put me in a difficult situation, it's not very likely. Knight Sorrow replied and gathered the virtue in his body, turning it into a virtue dragon that circled around the formation. devour and evolve the surrounding black gas. After being evolved by the dragon of virtue, some of the black gas around Night Sorrow immediately turned into ordinary gas. Everything within a radius of several hundred feet around him was purified. I didn't expect you to be not only an domain lord, but also a merit divine lord. Taoist Wu Mao snorted coldly when he saw what was happening. He looked at Night Sorrow with an increasingly cold gaze. After using a large number of deity crystals to summon a three-headed, six-armed evil god from the array, he prostrated himself on the ground and said, "Honorable evil king of the abyss, please help me devour this virtuous sovereign before me. Kill, 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 die, die, die." The summoned evil king opened his mouth and said 6 words, 3 kill, and 3 die, giving off an extremely evil and cold feeling. This thing that was summoned seems to be very strong. Captain, you have to be careful. Although Ho Lai, who was in the clear heaven pagoda, did not release his divine soul to sense the evil king's strength, he still warned him with some trepidation. He felt that even if he was in the clear heaven pagoda, he would immediately be targeted by the evil king when he glanced at it from the corner of his eyes. That kind of gaze made him feel as if there was a blade at his back. It's fine. It's just something deliberately mystifying. Its original body should be very strong, and it might even be a sovereign. However, this shadow in front of us only has the strength of the divine king at most. With the help of the virtue dragon, Night Sorrow calmly comforted Ho Lai after sensing the evil king's strength. Night Sorrow, big brother, you have to be careful. This guy in front of us looks very evil. Ling doesn't want you to get hurt. Cao Ling who was kept in the clear heaven pagoda by Night Sorrow, warned him despite knowing that Night Sorrow was very confident. Ling, don't worry. They have trump cards, but so does big brother Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow comforted her and said, "Watch me kill the evil king first, then break the formation. Finally, destroy the small world in front of us. I feel that they are definitely plotting something by using divine crystals to build a palace here." After saying that, Night Sorrow swallowed a few recovery pills and activated the Trayastrimsa battle secret technique again, raising his strength to the peak. Then he used the Samsara halberd to attack with the Heavenly Cloud's reincarnation spear. This move was a new spear technique that Night Sorrow had comprehended. It was not very flashy, but when it was used, it would borrow some of Tianyun Bao's sovereign strength. Its power was very terrifying. The Samsara halberd did not fly out of Night Sorrow's palm, but it shot out a golden spear light. What a powerful spear technique. The three-headed, six-armed evil king, who had been summoned, had not made any movements. After Night Sorrow made his move, he coldly snorted. Then a saber, a spear, a sword, a halberd, an axe, and a battle axe appeared on his 6 arms respectively. They shot out dark energy towards Night Sorrow's spear light one after another. After these 6 streams of dark energy were shot out, they quickly gathered together and formed a thick pillar of light. It collided with Night Sorrow's spear light. Boom! After a loud bang, the surrounding void was immediately shattered. At the same time, the dark energy light pillar shot out by the saber, spear, sword, halberd, axe, and battle axe were also shattered. The Heavenly Cloud's reincarnation spear's spear light fiercely bombarded the evil king's body. Bang! The three-headed, 6-armed divine king was immediately sent flying by this attack. However, his injuries were not very serious. After he got up, he said in a cold voice, "A puny divine monarch's attack actually contained the power of a sovereign. Now I, the evil king, will let you experience what a true sovereign's power is. Long live Lord Evil King." After the evil king said this, Taoist Wu Mao, who was originally prostrating on the ground, was so excited that he continuously kowtowed. Seeing their performance, Night Sorrow said disdainfully, "You who can't even be considered a divine soul, are delusional enough to think of using a true sovereign's attack? Stop dreaming." "Ha ha ha. Are you dreaming? You will know immediately." The three-headed, 6-armed evil king laughed sinisterly. He swallowed all the saber, spear, sword, halberd, axe, and battle axe in his hands into his stomach with the head in the middle. Not long after, its body grew rapidly until it was as tall as the sky. Using his 3 heads, he spat out countless fine needles. The rain of needles that filled the sky was bright and flickering. However, they were suffused with a faint black light and looked extremely evil. A true sovereign's power. You, a divine monarch, can't block my attack. Chapter 2752. A true dominator's power? I don't think so. At most, it's only slightly stronger than an ordinary divine king's attack. With the help of the power of virtue, Knight Sorrow could sense the other party's attack. This attack was indeed very strong. Those black needles were indeed not something a divine king artifact could block. Even the Samsara halberd had been stored in the clear sky pagoda by Knight Sorrow. However, Knight Sorrow did not use the Tianyun Bao in the face of this attack. Instead, he set up the virtuous dragonlock formation around himself and hid himself in a sealed space. Knight Sorrow had just set up the virtuous dragonlock formation around himself when the evil king shot out all the black needles. These needles were very powerful. Even the virtuous dragonlock formation could not restrain them. However, the black needles that passed through the power of virtue were all purified. As a result, the power of the rain of needles was reduced by 80%. Knight Sorrow, who was in the sealed space, took out the Samsara halberd and successfully blocked them. The power of virtue. This damned power of virtue is the nemesis of my dark abyss. Seeing that Knight Sorrow had used the power of virtue to neutralize the powerful attack of the rain of needles, the evil king angrily berated him. He was ready to attack again. At this moment, Knight Sorrow sneered. Since you finished attacking, it's my turn. It's just a shadow. Are you done yet? With a cold snort, he took out the Heavenly Cloud Bow and Heavenly Cloud Arrow from his spatial artifact. He knocked the arrow and shot it at Evil King. What? This is a true Dominator artifact. A Divine Lord can actually have a Dominator artifact and use it at will. How is this possible? The summoned Evil King immediately shouted in shock when he saw that Knight Sorrow could use the Dominator artifact Tianyun Bao at will. Lord Evil King, quickly dodge. You can't take the Dominator artifact's power head-on. Daoist Wu Mao, who had only raised his head when he heard the Evil King's shout, was immediately shocked by the scene in front of him. The light emitted by the Heavenly Cloud Arrow, which was infused with the power of merit, dispelled the surrounding darkness. Even the figure of the Dark Abyss Demon King became blurry under the illumination of the golden light. The dark aura of the formation has been dispelled. This Evil King's shadow has no way of dodging it. At this time, the three heads of the Dark Abyss Diablo all glared at Knight Sorrow and said, "Haha, ruler of the immortal domain, you have a complete sovereign artifact and defeated my shadow. But next time, the Dark Abyss army will descend upon this land. At that time, the entire immortal domain will be plunged into chaos. It's right in front of us. Die." Yi Shang was threatened by the other party's words and immediately became bold. He shot out another arrow and directly shattered the Evil King's body. The Evil King, who had been summoned from the Dark Abyss, was killed instantly. Daoist Wu Mao, who was prostrating on the ground, immediately stood up. He has a complete sovereign artifact. We are no match for him. But he had to stall for time. Let's finish the Devil Summoning Tower. As Daoist Wu Mao spoke, he glanced at the almost completed palace. Yes. Husband, we will fight to the death. The three Sir Gods responded and used their secret techniques to raise their aura to the maximum. They charged at Knight Sorrow crazily. You want to self-destruct and injure me? You are too naive. Seeing the three divine lords charging at him recklessly as if they had gone mad, Yishan shook his head, took out 3 heavenly cloud arrows, and shot them one after another. The 3 heavenly cloud arrows immediately turned into golden light, and sent the 3 Sir Gods flying. They were killed instantly. Deity Realm Cultivator, you deserve to die. Daoist Wu Mao was so angry that he turned into a black clam, and attached to the ground. Soon he merged with the ground and disappeared. What kind of technique is this? Knight Sorrow, who was floating in the air, was stunned. Then he used the sea serpent's eye to observe the ground. He realized that under Tianyun Bao's interference, the effects of the sovereign artifact cover had been broken. He could see the other party's movements clearly. He immediately retrieved a heavenly cloud arrow and shot it at the ground. However, What surprised him was that the black clam moved very quickly. Even the heavenly cloud arrow could not catch up with it. This is a little troublesome. Night Sorrow's arrow did not succeed. He immediately shot another arrow. However, it also did not hit Taoist Wu Mao's black clam body. Moreover, the heavenly cloud arrow could not catch up with him at all. This made him feel a little strange. However, when Night Sorrow was about to attack again, he suddenly looked at the palace that was still under construction. He thought to himself, the battle has already reached this stage. Taoist Wu Mao has no chance of counterattacking. His subordinates are still building the palace. This doesn't make sense. Could it be that they are plotting something? Ha. You realize something is wrong? Let me tell you, it's too late. The devil summoning pagoda that costs 180 million deity crystals has already been completed. Within 10,000 years, the army of the Dark Abyss will step onto the land of the immortal divine realm and devour everyone. At this moment, Taoist Wu Mao suddenly shouted in agitation. Then, without waiting for Night Sorrow to react, he continued, "Listen to my command, all of you, blood sacrifice." In an instant, he and the other dark creatures all chose to self-destruct. The black blood dyed the sparkling and translucent palace. The originally sparkling and translucent divine crystal palace was immediately dyed black by the black blood, and emitted a deep black light. I didn't expect to encounter such a thing on a simple hunting trip. Yin Tianyi, who had just walked out of the clear sky pagoda, said with a sigh. This is not a bad thing. If we are not prepared, when the army of the Dark Abyss arrives one day, the consequences will be unimaginable. Night Sorrow said to Yin Tianyi and flew near the blackened palace. He observed and indeed saw a huge teleportation array and a summoning array at the bottom of the pagoda. These two arrays need to be inspected by someone who knows how to dismantle them. After observing the teleportation array and summoning array in front of him, Night Sorrow did not understand the array patterns and did not act rashly. At this moment, the small world they were in suddenly became unstable and began to shake non-stop. This earthquake-like shaking made Night Sorrow's heart palpitate. He took out the jar's body and realized that the jar's body was also shaking and looked like it was about to explode. Not good. Taoist Wu Mao has activated the lid and is preparing to make it explode. We need to leave this place immediately. Night Sorrow, who was holding the jar's body, felt something in his heart. If a Dominator artifact were to self-destruct, the power would be unimaginable. He immediately kept Yin Tianyi and the others back into the clear sky pagoda, and used the Tianyun bow to pierce through the small world and enter the soundless ocean. Taoist Wu Mao actually activated the lid before he died. What's going on? Is he not afraid of destroying the two arrays? Chapter 2753. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. It doesn't matter if Taoist no-hairs methods are powerful or not. Whether the Dark Abyss is powerful or not, we just need to quickly increase our strength. Yin Tianyi said from the clear heaven pagoda. He was rather optimistic. However, at this moment, Night Sorrow's expression changed. The self-destruction of a Dominator-grade artifact is no small matter. We can't escape like this. Next, I will enter the jar. He felt that if he continued to escape, he would definitely be affected by the explosion of the lid. Thus, he entered the space within the jar. The space within the jar was very simple. It was just a primitive small world. It was different from the complexity of the lid. Not long after Night Sorrow entered, the jar suffered a huge impact. Even though he was inside the Dominator-grade artifact, he still felt his heart palpitate. About an hour later, the situation outside stabilized. Night Sorrow left the small world and returned to the soundless ocean. He returned to the location where Taoist No-Hair had set up the teleportation array and summoning array. He observed the two arrays. When they saw this, Yi Shang, Yin Tianyi, and the others fell silent. The explosion just now had destroyed almost everything in the surroundings. There was a destructive aura in the surroundings that made one sigh. However, when the two deity crystals were set up, the arrays that should have been very weak stood there unscathed. How can they be so sturdy? Holai didn't continue the conversation. Instead, he raised his hand and struck at the two formations. However, Just as his palm wind approached, it was dissolved by the arrays. Seeing the situation in front of him, Night Sorrow said, "I'm guessing that the self-destruction of half a Dominator-grade artifact wasn't just to kill us. It was also to strengthen the two arrays in front of us. I'll use Tianyun Bao to try attacking and see the effect. If it really doesn't work, I'll invite Dominator Tian Yi over to take a look." After saying that, Night Sorrow activated the Treastrimsa Battle Mystic technique and poured his blood into Tianyun Bao. When Tianyun Bao's state changed, he shot an arrow at the summoning array. However, after a boom, the teleportation array was undamaged. What kind of method is this? Yin Tianyi immediately said in disbelief. Although Night Sorrow didn't completely activate Tianyun Bao, the attack of a Dominator-grade artifact didn't cause any damage to the arrays. This was too incomprehensible. I think it's very likely. Although we can see the two arrays in front of us, they might not be on the same plane. Because they're attacking the arrays, they don't cause any damage. After thinking, Night Sorrow felt that the arrays, and 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 the arrays. And no hair. After observing for a while longer, they still couldn't find anything. Thus, they decided to give up and search for the heavenly void beast. The one he just discovered had the strength of a high god king. It shouldn't be easy to deal with. Yishang carefully searched the bottom of the soundless sea. To astute? Even if someone ambushed them, they wouldn't be able to sense it, so they returned to the battleship. They steered the battleship and sailed in the dark sea for a while. They didn't encounter any void beasts or other demonic beasts. Zhu Yunxia guessed, "I think the explosion of the Dominator-grade artifact might have affected a large area and scared away all the demonic beasts." That's probably the truth. Night Sorrow nodded and steered the battleship to continue stealthily in the silent sea. Although their divine souls and five senses were still blocked, with the protection of the battleship's outer shell, everyone felt a sense of security. However, after traveling for a while, they suddenly saw a huge palace complex and immediately paid attention to it. "Big brother Night Sorrow, can you let me go out and sense it?" Cowling immediately asked after seeing the palace complex not far away. "Okay. In any case, there shouldn't be much danger in the battleship." Night Sorrow nodded and let Cowlinger out. He stopped the battleship in the mud at the bottom of the sea and camouflaged it. After being let out, Cowling used her two horns to sense and said, "Big brother Night Sorrow, Ling, can sense that there should be something good behind the palace complex." "Something good? What is it?" Night Sorrow looked at Cowling and said. Cowling shook her head and sensed carefully. Then she said, "It seems to be a pile of bones, but it should be very valuable." "A pile of bones?" Night Sorrow was puzzled. Then he suddenly became alert and said, "Someone is coming from ahead." However, after seeing clearly, he shook his head and said, "It's not a cultivator, but a void beast. Not just one, but two." There were actually 5 or 6 void beasts in front of them. One of them had an extremely astonishing aura. It should be the strength of the upper-level Divine King. Sensing the powerful aura released by the void beast, Night Sorrow said, "In the Soundless Sea, not only is our speed affected, but our Divine Soul's perception ability has also become very poor. But these void beasts don't seem to be affected much. It seems to be like this." Yin Tianyi, who also came out of the Clear Heaven Pagoda and came to the battleship, nodded. At this time he said doubtfully, "But if the void beast's perception is stronger than ours, there's no reason not to sense our existence. This is because when I was refining the battleship, I set up concealment runes on the surface of the battleship. Otherwise we would have been exposed long ago." Night Sorrow explained and looked at the few void beasts again. He guessed wrong and said, "Since there are so many void beasts here, it proves that the palace is very likely the territory of the void beasts. The bones that Ling mentioned are very likely the void beast bones that we are looking for. If we find an opportunity to go in and collect some, we don't need to hunt the void beasts. It saves us a lot of trouble. But there are so many void beasts around. It's not easy to take action. Divine soul power was not of much use. Gungchen looked around with his naked eyes and found that there were not only the void beasts in front of him, but also a few more in the distance. With so many people, there will definitely be more eyes. In any case, the battleship has concealment runes, so it's very safe for you to hide here. I'm going to sneak in alone. Knight Sorrow, who was observing the palace, said. Hearing this, everyone's face changed. Yin Tianyi advised, Brother Yi, it's better not to go. With so many void beasts, the danger is too high. You're completely playing with your life. Although it's risky, it's worth it for the heaven and earth concealment array. Knight Sorrow looked at Yin Tianyi and said, Everyone, don't worry. Before I leave the battleship, I will carefully set up concealment runes on my body, so that the void beasts won't find me so easily. Chapter 2754. I still feel that doing this is no different from barging into a tiger's den. It's not worth taking such a risk for a set of void beast bones. Seeing Knight Sorrow preparing to leave the warship, Yin Tianyi opened his mouth to persuade. In his view, Knight Sorrow's life was much more important than a set of void beast bones. Ho Lai felt that what Yin Tianyi said made a lot of sense. Looking at Knight Sorrow, he said, Captain, what Brother Yin said is right. Just for a set of void beast bones, you're going deep into the void beast territory. If there are too many divine king level void beasts inside, or even void beast kings close to sovereign strength, that's very dangerous. What you all said makes sense. But for the safety of the immortal divine realm, it's fine for me to pay some personal price. Besides, I don't feel that I'll be killed so easily. Knight Sorrow consoled everyone with a few words. Glancing at Cao Ling he said, Everyone take good care of Ling. It's best to give her some pointers in cultivation. Relax. Yin Tianyi saw that Knight Sorrow had already made up his mind, and did not persuade anymore. Regarding Cao Ling's matter, he agreed very readily. But after agreeing, he reacted and asked, Hearing your tone, you're preparing to go for a long time? Because if the time was short, there was no need to explain things like cultivation. Who knows how long I'll be gone for, but I'll try my best to return as soon as possible. After all, there's still a 10-year agreement with Aunt Fei. I don't want to miss the appointment. But when I go over, I'll leave behind the vast heaven pagoda. Letting Ling, or cultivate inside should be able to cultivate in peace for a while. Knight Sorrow took out the vast heaven pagoda and placed it on the warship, saying, Also if you encounter danger, you can control the warship and directly leave. No need to specially wait for me. Alright then. You must ensure your own safety. Zhu Yunxia and the rest nodded. They were all clear about Knight Sorrow's temper. Before he left, each of them instructed a few words. After leaving the battleship, Knight Sorrow waited for the nearby void beasts to leave before sneaking in the direction that Cao Ling had indicated. He knew that if he followed this direction, he would soon reach the edge of the palace complex. The palaces of the void beast were completely different from those of the royal family in the mortal world. The height of the palaces was almost as high as the sky, and they looked very majestic. When Knight Sorrow entered, he was no different from an inconspicuous mosquito. Knight Sorrow, who had activated the sea serpent's eye to observe, hadn't discovered any array patterns or encountered any void beasts. Combined with the situation of the void beasts just now, he judged that the void beasts should have gathered together. After exploring the palaces for a while, Knight Sorrow realized that he was in a completely uninhabited place. He didn't encounter any void beasts at all. What's going on? This shouldn't be the case. Even if the entire clan leaves, shouldn't the corresponding array be activated? As they continued to approach the void beast bone, Knight Sorrow felt more and more surprised. After all, he had seen several void beasts just now. As he went deeper, he used the sea serpent's eye to discover many array patterns, but the array formations weren't activated. However, what surprised Knight Sorrow even more was yet to come. Even after he passed through the palaces and arrived at the void beast graveyard and saw dozens of void beast skeletons, not a single void beast appeared nearby. This was simply incomprehensible. Forget it. Since I'm here, I'll just take it as it comes. There were no void beasts around at all. He casually walked around the graveyard and chose high-grade void beast skeletons. In the end, he chose a complete high-grade Divine King Void Beast skeleton and stored it in a spatial Dharma artifact. Night Sorrow had never expected to obtain what he wanted so smoothly. When he walked out of the graveyard, he even laughed out loud. His luck was really good. However, at this moment, something strange happened. The graveyard where Night Sorrow was suddenly shook violently. Then, the huge graveyard split open into an endless abyss. What's going on? Everything had been going too smoothly. Now that there was a sudden change, Yishan immediately became alert. At the same time, an extremely gigantic void beast rose from the endless abyss. It was dozens of times larger than the void beast skeleton that he kept. It was a colossal creature that blotted out the sky. However, it was also just a skeleton. Human cultivator. After the gigantic void beast that was already in the form of a skeleton rose, it immediately called out to Night Sorrow. "I'm a human cultivator." "You are?" Night Sorrow replied and asked at the same time. "I'm the ancestor of the void beast race. My name is Su Changtian. I once transformed into a human and walked in the divine world." The void beast ancestor, Su Changtian, replied to Night Sorrow and continued. "Today, I exhausted the last of my vitality to appear because the void beast race is in great danger. I want to ask for your help." "Indeed, I didn't see any of your clansmen when I rushed over." Night Sorrow looked at the void beast ancestor floating in the air and asked, "What happened?" "Sigh. All of this happened because of me. Originally, I grew up in the dark abyss and was called the void nightmare beast there. However, one day, I unexpectedly came to the divine world and immediately fell in love with the soundless ocean, gradually washing away the aura of the dark creatures, to live a life of peace and tranquility. Later, I mated with the Tao Wu of the divine world and gave birth to the current void beast race." At this point, Su Changtian sighed and said, "A few days ago, a ruler of the dark abyss sent a voice transmission to the void beasts, asking our race to help build a summoning formation. However, our race refused. However, they used some unknown method to attack the Tao Wu clan. The void beasts that we sent to help have all gone missing one after another. When they reappeared, they were all hung outside the walls of the Tao Wu clan. Our void beast race has all gone to rescue them. You want me to rush to the Tao Wu territory and help save the void beasts?" After hearing Su Changtian's words, Night Sorrow asked. He was surprised that the other party was from the dark abyss. What surprised him was that the other party did not choose to help the ruler of the dark abyss. "It's like this. I won't let you do it for free. Weren't you looking for the complete void hand bones just now?" Su Changtian looked at Night Sorrow and said, "If you agree to help, I will give you this skeleton. When I was alive, I was infinitely close to the ruler's strength, much stronger than the one in your hand." "All right. I agree. However, why do you think I have the ability to help the void beasts?" Night Sorrow asked in confusion. After Su Changtian appeared, he immediately treated him as a life-saving straw. This was something that he did not understand. "I can feel that you are very strong, even stronger than the upper-level divine king of my race. In addition, I can sense the aura of a ruler's artifact on you. This can't be wrong," Su Changtian said and continued. "I didn't expect you to agree so easily." Night Sorrow did not hesitate, and chose to agree immediately, because he felt that the Tao Wu clan's incident was very likely caused by the dark abyss. He wanted to eliminate all the creatures of the dark abyss for the divine world. He said calmly, "In fact, dealing with the dark creatures is my responsibility." Chapter 2755. Void Beast Progenitor Su Changtian sized up Night Sorrow and said, "If I hadn't died a long time ago, I'm afraid I would have a hard time facing your virtuous flames. You have virtuous merits, so you won't lie. Take my skeleton. I only hope that you can preserve the bloodline of the Void Beast tribe." Su Changtian said and landed on the ground. Night Sorrow looked at him and said, "Since you're still conscious, lead the way. We'll go straight to the Tao Wu tribe. After all, saving people is like putting out a fire." Because of his virtuous power, Night Sorrow could feel that Su Changtian's words were not false at all. "There's a teleportation formation near my tribe that leads to the Tao Wu tribe. Su Changtian said as he led Night Sorrow to the teleportation formation. Although the Taowu tribe is not far from my tribe, the teleportation formation is faster. Alright. Let's go. Night Sorrow looked at the location of the battleship. There was no movement there. He guessed that Yun Tianyi and the others should be safe, so he was not in a hurry to go back. He stepped onto the teleportation formation with Su Changtian, who had been dead for many years. After a dizzying light, Night Sorrow and Su Changtian appeared together in a hidden cave. At this time, Su Changtian transmitted his voice to Night Sorrow. My body is too big. Put me in your spatial artifact. The remaining trace of my soul will attach itself to your fingertips and guide you. Okay. This time, Night Sorrow did not hold back. He directly put away the skeleton that had completely lost its vitality but was still very strong. After Su Changtian attached himself to the tip of his little finger, Night Sorrow said, "There's not a single void beast tribe in the cave. They should have all gone out to fight, right?" "Should be. I wonder what the Dark Abyss has done this time." Su Changtian sighed. They were already very close to the Taowu tribe's territory, but he could not hear any sounds of battle. He was very worried about his descendants. Let's see. Night Sorrow sent him a telepathic message and walked out of the cave along the stone wall. To be safe, he activated the sea serpent's eye immediately. After observing, Night Sorrow immediately discovered that there was a vague concealment array at the entrance of the cave. Concealment array, there might be someone inside. Night Sorrow sent a voice transmission to Su Changtian. Then he cast the virtuous dragonlock formation and locked the concealment formation in the sealed space. Then he would enter and destroy the concealment formation. The moment the formation was broken, a high divine lord immediately rushed out from inside. He had the appearance of a human cultivator, but he was clearly under the control of a dark creature. His body was emitting a thick black aura. Everyone has the right to kill dark creatures. Night Sorrow sneered at his opponent who had stabbed him with his sword, and was emitting a dark aura. He took out his heavenly Samsara halberd and attacked. The King-grade divine artifact, the reincarnation heavenly halberd, clashed with the divine lord-grade divine artifact, and the result was obvious. The humanoid body controlled by the dark creature was immediately smashed into the wall. At this moment, the dark creature completely left the body and attached itself to Night Sorrow, wanting to take control of his body. You don't know what's good for you. Night Sorrow did not use the power of his astral body to resist. Instead, he used the power of virtue in his body to destroy the dark creature. However, it only had the strength of a divine lord. To the current Night Sorrow, absorbing its power of virtue would not increase his strength by much. You attacked so quickly, you shouldn't have been exposed, right? Su Changtian said with relief when he saw Night Sorrow close in on the battle in an instant. I shouldn't have been discovered, but all the void beasts who left here should have been exposed. They should be in bad condition. Night Sorrow said worriedly. The creatures of the Dark Abyss are extremely murderous. We have to hurry. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. Su Changtian's voice was trembling. He was obviously worried about his descendants. They shouldn't have been killed so quickly. After all, before I entered the cemetery, I saw them. As Night Sorrow comforted him, he did not stop and walked out of the cave. At this moment, he remembered that he still had the concealment runes on him. He immediately activated the runes and walked out of the cave. After walking out of the cave, Night Sorrow found himself in the depths of a mountain range so high that the peak could not be seen. There was no aura of life nearby. Therefore, he asked Su Changtian. Next, where should we go? I'm basically invisible now. I can go almost anywhere. Then let's fly directly into the void and observe the surrounding terrain. I haven't been here for many years, but if I remember correctly, the territory of the Taowu clan is directly north, Su Changtian replied. I originally thought that we would be teleported directly into the territory of the Taowu clan. Night Sorrow said as he flew into the void and looked down through the clouds. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, he did not use his astral body. When he looked into the distance, Night Sorrow's expression immediately changed. On the city wall of the Taowu clan, the void beasts that had taken human form had all been beheaded. The Taoists that appeared near the city wall were all controlled by the dark creatures, just like the one in the concealment formation. Some of their eyes were pure black, while others were dark red. Every one of their eyes looked very ferocious. Those that didn't take human form looked like lions that had gone berserk. Bastard! These dark creatures really had the nature of extinction. It's a pity that I, Su Changtian, am completely dead. Otherwise, I would definitely kill my way to the dark abyss and take revenge. Su Changtian looked at the scene in front of him and said fiercely. He had used 2,000 reincarnations to remove all the dark aura of his descendants, but the dark creatures only took a few days to almost wipe out the tribe he had built. This kind of despair made Su Changtian feel very uncomfortable. If what you said just now was true, I have a way to bring you back to life. Night Sorrow immediately said when he heard Su Changtian's words. At this time, Su Changtian's astral body was still in the third zone. He had the secret technique of the Trayastrimsa astral body. If he imparted it, Su Changtian's astral body could completely recover after a long period of cultivation. At that time, as long as he consumed the heavenly 1000 transformation pill like Mo Yu Qian and the others, he would be able to recover. Impossible, I'm completely dead. How could I still be alive? Su Changtian did not believe Night Sorrow's words at all. After all, he had lost his Dantian and Spirit Sea. You said it yourself, I'm the virtuous Divine Lord. If I don't lie, why would I lie to you? Night Sorrow replied Su Changtian and continued. But to save you, there is a prerequisite. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.